Time has come, New York. Our time is now.
Zohran! Mayor! Zohran! Mayor!
Have the momentum, and we're going to win.
What's happening?
We have to start to make changes to how we are running our state. Costs are too high for people.
Increases in taxes are off the table.
Virginia can and will flip statewide seats from red to blue.
We need for Virginia to continue to give me the ball. There's much field and much ground to cover. We're not done yet.
Election night all across America, Maine to California, Miami to Seattle. 30 million Americans are expected to cast their votes. So good evening, brothers and sisters. This is News Nation with special edition tonight for the elections where right and left can come to be reasonable. Chris Cuomo alongside the best team, Elizabeth Vargas, Leland Vittert, political editor Chris Stirewalt, the man at the wall, Connell McShane. It's a weird way to be known, but it's an important way.
I'll take it.
And here's what I'm watching for. I'm very happy to be witnessing history with each and all of you. Again, it's great to be here.
Great to have you.
I believe tonight we are going to see the pathway to the midterms. I think that we now see what the opposition is to MAGA. There is a new movement in town that I think we're going to hear a lot about in the midterms. So we'll be watching, and there are races, obviously, that are going to matter tonight.
Yeah, lots of races in lots of states. And as you said, everybody's looking to see what tea leaves they can read about what this might mean for the all-important midterm elections next year. This is the first time that people have gone to the polls since the election of President Donald Trump. And even though President Trump is not on the ballot, clearly, obviously, a lot of people would say his agenda is, he is, his administration is, and how people are responding to that. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see these results as they come in. Not just who wins, by what margins they win, because that will also say a lot.
I think by in town, you meant more than just New York City.
More than New York City. There is a much less attractive version of me on the ballot in New York City. There are other races to watch.
But I was going to say beyond that, you think about a year ago, we were all here at this desk announcing Donald Trump's victory.
The first to do so.
The first to do so, we were with our friends at Decision Desk HQ. When we announced that, think of we had said what that meant. We all had opinions of what that meant with the data from the Decision Desk HQ guys crunching this data, and they will tonight for more than 13,000 elections, ballot initiatives, district attorneys, mayors' races in big cities. Transparency, analysis, and most importantly, that precinct-by-precinct data all along. What we gleaned from that data a year ago, if we had then said, oh, by the way, there's going to be a socialist who wins in a year from now in New York City, I think there would have been some crazy pills we would have all been given.
You would have said, what are you smoking?
True,
or something like
true.
that.
But I remember talking to Chris about when Trump won, how would he deliver on the mandate? What would be the promises that would be the fundamental thing? And the looming question was, what would Democrats do to get out of Trump bad? Like, they had to be more than that. I think we now know, Chris, what their answer is to what is more than just that.
3 key groups to watch tonight, and this will answer your question. We know Democrats are fired up, right? They'd eat a glass Coke bottle to go vote. We've watched special election after special election. They're outperforming Kamala Harris's numbers by 16, 17, 18 points. They're in it. The 2 groups I'm watching most closely tonight are the independent voters, the deciders, the majority makers, and we're going to get to see a lot of them, particularly in New Jersey and particularly in Virginia. But in answer to your question, what about the Republicans, right? We've spent a lot of time talking about the Democrats. What about the Republicans? You keep and win majorities when you vote, when it's hard, when it doesn't feel good, and you have to go out and vote even though you think you're probably going to lose. That's how you save down ballot races. That's how you pull people across the finish line. So this is a test tonight of a lot of things, but it's certainly a test of the MAGA coalition and the willingness of Republicans to go vote even on a tough night.
And we'll see that particularly in New Jersey, where it's a blue state historically, but Trump did very, very well last year in that election. Will those people who went out and voted for President President Trump in 2024 turn out to vote for Jack Ciattarelli, who's the Republican nominee for governor. We shall see.
Was it a situationship in 2024, or was this the start of a new coalition that Republicans have? Were they voting against Kamala Harris, or were they voting for Donald Trump?
Was it a one-off or a trend?
And also, keep in mind that Donald Trump was off the campaign trail. Right? I mean, that tells us a lot.
He did tele-rallies
last night. He did tele-rallies. That's a whole...
Where he didn't even mention the name of the Republican nominee for governor in Virginia, which was very interesting.
Yeah, but way different than showing up. It shows you what Republicans and what those candidates think of what Donald Trump will and can do or cannot do for them.
He did put out an interesting social media tweet, the president saying about the Ciattarelli race. You know, obviously that's the Republicans guy in Virginia. All of these Hasidic Jews, he said, we're coming to the polls big in Virginia, and they all love me, and that's going to be delivering big for Ciattarelli. You know, you and I were talking before the show about the power of the Jewish voting blocks in different places, specifically the Hasidim. But I don't know, Chris, you tell me, if the Hasids in Virginia were what to watch for in determining the race.
I don't know. Northern Virginia's got a little bit of everything in it. I don't know. Maybe Eric Cantor has cousins down in Richmond. He can get them out. I don't know.
Well, but if they're voting for Ciattarelli in Virginia, they're in the wrong
This would be a big
state.
problem.
But it just showed that Trump is still trying, Leland, is what I'm trying to say. He's trying to say he's important. So the good news is the first race really to look at will be in Virginia because the polls are closed. They closed just a few minutes ago as we began our coverage. So we're getting the best, freshest what's going to happen, all right? And the right person to talk to is the man in charge of the Republican Party in Virginia, Mark Peake, who joins us now. Mark, thank you for joining us. Very important night. You've been hearing what we're playing with about the race. How does that resonate with your ears? What are you looking for?
Well, we're turnout, and so that's what I'm waiting to hear is where the turnout was. And you talked about the Trump 24 voters. That's been a big issue in Virginia, as well as we're trying to reach people who have only shown up to vote for Trump. When I get the turnout numbers, I'll know if we were successful or not. And then the question is, did we turn out at our 2021 levels, or did the Democrats just surpass us? As you know, in Virginia, we got a 50-plus year history of going opposite the White House. And that is something we're always fighting. In 2017, we lost by about 9 points. Here we are again. We're going to see, but we've got to see what the turnout was.
Mark, of course, turnout's always going to be an important thing. But in terms of the idea of what the state of play is in terms of intensity, because Republicans are in power in Washington, and we're now seeing the reaction of MAGA on the left, the mirror image movement, is my suspicion. Are you feeling that in your state?
Well, they're definitely fired up, and that's always what happens in Virginia for 50-plus years. Whatever's going on in Washington trickles down across the river and into Virginia, and that's just a trend we have to fight. Of course, this year, this election season, it's been a little more dramatic with the Doge cuts and then the government shutdown. So there's been a lot going on in Washington that has a huge impact in Northern Virginia and trickles into the rest of the state as well. And so we'll know if Republicans, as you were talking earlier, did Republicans not show up, or did Democrats overperform, or did Republicans overperform? So that's what we're waiting for. The polls are closed, so we're going to be finding out soon.
So you don't think you can tell us right now you think you're going to win this race? You don't think you're going to win this race? You don't know yet?
I do not know. I don't have the numbers. They just closed. I've been preparing for you guys for the last 30 minutes, so I haven't been able to look at any numbers. So I'm waiting, though. When you get them, let me know.
Leland has been listening and watching.
Mark, just to explain to our viewers, on the bottom of our screen, we have a win probability, and that takes into account polling, the early and absentee voting information that we already have, and any of the results that come in. It showed Abigail Spanberger with a 90+% chance of winning the race there in Virginia. I know you would disagree with that assessment, but that's where the data from Decision Desk HQ brings us in. The question I have for you, though, is about...
Is that some exit polling as well, did you say?
It takes in everything that we have. Chris, does that bring in exit polling that we get when it becomes available?
Yeah, I mean, it will take it all in.
It takes it all in.
Yeah.
It takes it all in, and then it changes throughout the night as the data comes in. But this is something Chris and I were talking about before the show in our production meeting, which is the Jay Jones race. He is the Democrat running for Attorney General, who has sort of a deplorable record when it comes to texting. There were some texts that he sent where he talked about wanting to see the Speaker of the House murdered and his children dead in their mother's arms. That all came out. Ordinarily, that would be totally disqualifying. It is not. He still seems to be, if not the favored candidate, a 50-50 candidate to win. My question to you is this. How is it that Republicans running against somebody who ordinarily would be totally disqualified by those kinds of remarks and those kinds of texts, how is it that a Republican in the Attorney General's race is not doing better?
Well, I think our Republican is doing well. What is more shocking, the real question is, how could a Democrat or an independent vote for somebody like that? And what you left off is another one of his texts, which was, we need more police officers to be killed in the streets to maybe make our streets safer. That's something he said. So how could anyone vote for that guy? The Republicans have turned out. Well, I assume we'll see what the turnout is. But how could anyone support that guy? How could Spanberger and
how close
Hashmi
does Winsome Sears, as we're watching this tonight, from your guys' own Get Out the Vote operation, how close do you think Winsome Sears has to get in order to give Jay Jones a real run for his money? How big do you think Spanberger's coattails are?
Well, I will tell you, before the Jay Jones story broke, we thought that she's got to be within 5 to 6 points of Spanberger. After, that was before these texts came out. With these texts and his text about the police officers. And today he was trying to kick a dog at the polling place. This guy is horrific. I mean, how can anybody vote for that guy?
I'll just finish it up with this question. if after everything you've just said about Jay Jones, a Republican can't beat him, what does that say about the candidates Republicans are putting forth in Virginia?
We've got one of the best attorney generals in the country running for re-election. He's got a stellar record. If we can't beat Jay Jones, it's because Virginia has gone for 50-plus years opposite of the White House and what's going on in D.C. I mean, Jason Miyares has been a spectacular attorney general. He's safe streets, law and order, plus gone after big pharmaceutical companies for addiction issues, gotten huge recoveries. If they support this guy,
Mark, the polls are already closed. We don't have to keep going with the talking points, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
But something's wrong for people who voted for that guy.
All right, well, there is that. Mark, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Elizabeth?
Thank you, guys.
Let's go to Joe Khalil, speaking of this race, because he is live at Abigail Spanberger's headquarters in Richmond, Virginia. Joe, got to be a pretty good mood out there. Polls have now closed. Projections show that she's going to win. Now the question is, perhaps, by how much?
And if you can hear the cheers behind us, they are watching some other networks, unfortunately, but seeing some of the projections about their race. I can tell you, I just spoke with some of the campaign folks here for Abigail Spanberger. They are feeling very good about where they are. They first said cautiously optimistic, but then they went on to tell me they're feeling very good about where they are. And the reason is because they have been watching areas that they needed to win historically for Democrats. So we're talking about areas right around Washington, D.C. We're talking about some of the suburbs and around the urban areas. And they said that early voting there was significantly higher than in other parts of the state. Remember that Virginia has had 45 days of early voting here in the Commonwealth. But in the last couple, they have seen a major surge. Saturday, they told me, was a record-breaking number for early votes. And today, her campaign says that they were getting reports of precincts in those very areas that I've just been talking about, suburbs and right around Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia, where they had reports of long lines, which they perceive as a very good sign for her in this race. So you add that to just the historical tendencies that we haven't since 1985 had a moment where the party in power in the White House wins the governor's race in Virginia, except for one time. So the history is on their side. They feel like the momentum and what they're seeing from these early results on their side as well. We're going to get numbers here very soon, guys.
All right, Joe Khalil, let us know once we start getting, if you hear anything, we obviously have our DDHQ all over it. Connell McShane is going to call those numbers as soon as he gets them in, but this is definitely a key race to watch. There are a lot of races to watch tonight, including who's going to be mayor and lead the country's largest city, the financial capital of the world. It has grabbed the attention of the entire country and the sitting president. We're going to have the latest on the race for mayor of New York City next.
We are on the brink of making history in our city, on the brink of saying goodbye to a politics of the past. It is time now for a new day in our politics.
You want to make change in government? You think it's easy? You have to learn how to make that government work.
Tomorrow, hopefully, we shock the world, not just in terms of how many people came out, but to say the route to City Hall did not go through the suites of the billionaires.
All right, there you saw the three candidates running to lead New York City. It's been a very closely watched race around the country, but also from the White House. We got endorsements just last night from President Trump, from Elon Musk, even President Trump's staff member Stephen Miller, all for Andrew Cuomo, the independent running in this race. We actually are going to get to our latest coverage of the New York City mayor race, but we already have our first call of the night from Decision Desk HQ, which can project Abigail Spanberger to win for Virginia.
There you go,
governor.
our first call after the 7 p.m. close, and Abigail Spanberger becomes the first female governor in the state of Virginia. We knew that would be the headline tonight. The only question was, who would it be? Would it be Spanberger or would it be Winston Earl Sears, the Republican lieutenant governor? There's the vote as it comes in live in the state of Virginia, but our partners at Decision Desk HQ have enough data. There was a heavy turnout in the early vote in Virginia to make this projection early. For example, we've been talking about turnout, and we will throughout the night in all of these races. And in Virginia, there were about 300,000 additional early votes in this particular election compared to what we saw in 2021. So Spanberger rides that wave to victory, and we'll talk, if we can pop up the DDHQ map here, we can show you a few of the counties that they come in. Spanberger has the win in some detail about where it's happening, and some of the areas in and around, as you look at where Virginia stands, around the country right now, some of the areas in and around Washington, D.C. Were being very, very closely watched because of the government shutdown, for example. So we were going to watch some of those counties, but where Spanberger is going to take it there in Virginia is, and we see some of the votes out and where they're remaining. Right now we just have limited data coming in, so we're not getting a lot of votes in. There's the seats in Congress, looking to get the live results coming up here, and well, for whatever reason, they're having a little bit of difficulty coming up. But here's
light on the data.
We're stuck in 2024.
I'm usually I'm
it's
filling
all great,
time
baby.
A little bit more effectively than this, but I'm hitting live results.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Just the headline gives you something to deal with.
Yeah, well,
You can play with
the
iPad.
point that Connell also makes is that
what a start,
there's so little vote in, but one of the reasons that DDHQ can make these projections is because of how many votes there simply were early and where they were. The fact that there was such bigger turnout in Northern Virginia, for example, which is going to be a Spanberger heavy area, that tells us a lot. Later in the night, and I know this is something Connell will dig into later, we look down in the areas around
don't guarantee. Not now. Later.
After the reboot.
So worth pointing out, just about 2% of the vote is in. So far, there is no discernible delta now we're up to about a 4-point delta between Abigail Spanberger and the controversial Democratic nominee for Attorney General.
She's higher or not?
She's just moved a couple points higher than him.
And how many points between the two of them becomes relevant?
5, 6 points, and that's right where they're riding right now. So what
Spanberger wins by 6+, then Jay Jones could win.
All right, hey, let's go out to Joe Khalil, who's, I don't think, he's at the Abigail Spanberger campaign headquarters. Joe, do they know there that DDHQ has projected that she is going to be the next governor of Virginia?
The room is not aware, and I
maybe
just
you should get on
actually
stage and let them know.
Somebody on her campaign know by texting them. I know, you know, I warned them ahead of time that Decision Desk was going to be making this call before everybody else, because historically Decision Desk does that. And I told them we might get a call either way beforehand. They're watching something else, so no cheers or anything have erupted yet. Again, I'm waiting to see if there's any response. I just texted the campaign staff and let them know that News Nation is now calling the race for her. So again, and I was listening into the conversation you just had, it was almost exactly what I was hearing from them, is that they were watching in the key areas and whether the turnout was high enough so that they would have an indication early on, and that apparently is what Decision Desk also has. So the minute that they are aware of it and the minute that I can get some kind of response from the Spanberger team, I will let you all know. But I imagine they're going to be erupting here any moment now.
I'm sure the news will spread. You know, this has been interesting because that turnout was huge in Virginia in voters.
They had big early voting. And look, this is why early voting is controversial, especially on the right. You get a hyper turnout. And now, you got two things going on. One is reaction formation to who's in power.
Right.
So the out of power have the outrage right now. Outrage is even more of a dynamic energetically than I've really ever seen in our politics. So you now know that MAGA has a counter in angry people on the left. That's going to drive turnout. You also have a lot of money and time going into early voting and pushing it. And it's getting increasingly controversial because it's starting to matter more and more in these races. But Spanberger is a great counterfactual to my theory of what tonight means. I believe that the left is showing itself that the new Democratic Party is a mirror image of MAGA. We're the angry ones. We're angry about affordability. We don't like your culture rules. We want to disrupt it. We want to tear it down. That's not Spanberger. Spanberger is a CIA operative, right? 8 years, highly decorated, highly skilled, member of Congress, and is known for saying, though young, I think certainly under 50, never use socialism again.
Yeah, she said in 2020, Democrats should never say the word socialist
She also, in the debate, couldn't answer, should boys be allowed to play in girls' sports? I mean, she certainly is, I don't want to say a product of the progressive left, but she is certainly akin and aware of their power and unwilling to challenge them. What happens to every Democrat you've heard say what should be obvious to everybody about whether they want a girl my size playing against their daughters? They get killed. Well, they can't say it. The only one who's gotten away with it a little bit is Newsom in his new shift, and that's because he is throwing so many more punches than so many people on the left that they gave him a pass. But that's why. It's not like she can't handle the question. She knows the price. Well, she does know the price, but she's not willing to pay it. Hank Scheinkoff, political strategist, worked for Bill Clinton. Former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg as well is with us. Hank, we kept hearing in the run-up to this election that Democrats are a big tent party over and over again. The fact that you have Spanberger, which Cuomo rightly points out, is a more centrist candidate, and Mamdani now in New York, the highest ranking socialist to ever win an election, or the largest, most significant office for a socialist to ever win in America. The fact that has now happened on the same day, is that proof that Democrats are big tent folks?
No, it's not. Although it's a great question. What it proves is that regionalism matters, and the Democrats, frankly, have not been able to capture the city with probably the highest Democratic registration of any city in the country. You know, it's not a good night for Democrats in that way, with the idea of the big tent.
But Hank, Look, the mayor's race is a one-line analysis, right? The Democrat almost always wins. So Mamdani is the Democratic candidate. He is the choice of the party. He would be a presumptive favorite. And yes, I mean, Hank, I've known you since I was a kid. Yes, Andrew Cuomo is obviously my brother. He is not expected to win. I haven't seen anything in the early voting numbers that would make me feel otherwise about it yet, but we'll all be watching. But Hank, when you say they haven't captured the Democratic vote, the Democrats are a prohibitive favorite in New York City. So explain the point.
Absolutely, you're correct, Chris, that they are a prohibitive favorite. But the problem here is that the Democratic nominee is a socialist, not a Democrat. He's a DSA member. Looking at the DSA website, it's pretty clear how they feel about things. They don't love the country. They don't love cops. They don't love Israel. They're not crazy about an awful lot of things that normative people in the middle would feel. So what you have in New York City, which is the financial capital of the world, a left-wing Democratic socialist now likely to be the mayor versus a moderate, a very established, very capable man named Andrew Cuomo, and a lunatic, excuse me, that's not right, someone who's certainly not capable of running the city named Curtis Sliwa. Now, you don't have those kinds of circumstances, nor the kind of turnouts you have, unless there's an emergency situation in your life. You know, you may not have been alive for 1969, but John Lindsay won that election. How so? 3 different people, 3 different campaigns going on, just like today. John Lindsay was a Liberal Party candidate, an independent, obviously. John Markey was the Republican candidate, and a fellow named Mario Procaccino was the Democratic candidate. John Lindsay ran. What's the difference? The difference is that Virginia has a much more static population, and New York City is going through an extraordinary demographic shift that is yet to be really understood, where the Chinese are the fastest growing group. The people from North Africa who are Muslims are a fast-growing group, and Africans number almost 1 million people today. That New York City is different than the New York City we have known, and that's one of the reasons why we're having the kind of election we're having today.
You know, Hank, I keep hearing from Republican sources that they are excited in one way or another by Mamdani's victory, and they say, look, Mamdani is going to energize the socialists and the far left and the progressive around the country, and therefore it's going to be better for Republicans to run against. Should Democrats be scared, worried, concerned, ecstatic?
Democrats should be somewhat concerned. Why? I've said something that may or may not make sense, but every time Mamdani opens his mouth, he likely creates another suburban Republican. Why should Democrats be scared? Because this outcome tonight may very well reduce the probability that they can undo what Donald Trump has done, which is to recreate the traditional battle between the cities, the suburbs, and the exurbs. That's a staple of American politics going back to almost the beginning of the country. Donald Trump thrives on that. Democrats are going to have a problem if they are confined simply to the cities and they can't increase their voting strength in the suburbs. How are they to, frankly, grow? Be very tough.
All right, Hank Shankoff, incredible analysis on all fronts. Thank you very much. Decision Desk HQ, now the first, this is becoming a tradition, the very first to call the Virginia governor's race. Decision Desk HQ now projecting Abigail Spanberger. There is the nerd war room. They got it first for Abigail Spanberger, the next governor and the first female governor of Virginia. What exactly does that mean, especially for capturing the swing voters of America? Up next, former presidential candidate, founder of the Forward Party, Andrew Yang, with us.
All right, we have our second race call of the night. As Decision Desk HQ is projecting the Democrat, Ghazala Hashmi, wins in the lieutenant governor's race in the state of Virginia. We're going to be looking at a couple of things here. Now that the wall is back up and running, my wall in Virginia, and that is the margin between Democrats and Republicans. And also, we talked about it earlier, the turnout. How many people are showing up to vote in these races? 57-43 is what we're tracking, with 17% of the vote in. You get a sense of Virginia throughout the night. We'll get into these counties in and around Washington, D.C. I mentioned government shutdown earlier. So far, 2.8 million votes are in this race for lieutenant governor. We can go back to the big board and just bring up, before I go back to you guys, the race that we already called here on News Nation, thanks to DDHQ. That's the race for governor. What's the margin there? 58-42 for Spanberger is how it's tracking. How many votes are in? 2.8 million already. We talked earlier, guys, and with Starwalt and company about how many of those were early, and now we see the margins between the two. We'll talk about it with AG as well as we get those results in. But
That's almost, it's 18% of the vote, though. I mean, we're up there. Yeah.
Well, because of the increases in technology and how they can project numbers, especially Tranter and the DDHQ guys, it gives us an advantage. In the old days, you weren't around yet, but we used to have to really wait because things would swing based on how much vote was left in different areas. Although, good to have you at the table, Brother Yang. What is your read, Andrew, on what we may see from Democrats tonight, and if at all, is it being evidenced or countered by what we just saw with Spanberger?
No, I think the Virginia results are more indicative of the national climate. There are going to be a lot of lessons drawn from the New York City mayoral, but this is a very distinct town. Democratic registration advantage, something like 5 to 1.
Almost 6 to 1, yeah.
Almost 6 to 1, which is highly unusual. And so people are going to, if Zohran ends up winning, as the polls indicate, the key number to me is, does he break 50%?
Right.
Because there are a lot of projections that show him winning, but not breaking the 50.1% threshold because he has two opponents. And if he has less than 50%, he's going to have a much weaker case in Albany to get some of his goals accomplished.
Yeah, he needs that popular mandate. If he doesn't get it, he will be seen as weaker by political opponents. It will be harder for him. I mean, he's got a lot of big ideas. He doesn't really explain how he's going to pay for them except to tax the rich, and he, as mayor, cannot do that. That is something the governor of the state must do. And right now, the sitting governor, Kathy Hochul, says she's not going for it.
I don't think you can underestimate, and I'll put this in the form of a question to you, the change that has happened in New York City. A year ago, Zohran Mamdani was walking around with a camera trying to interview people about the victory of Donald Trump. He couldn't get anybody to stop and talk to him. And somehow in a year, he has beaten Andrew Cuomo in a Democratic primary and is now poised to become a socialist as a mayor of New York City. You can't say that that is not an incredible political movement, mandate, sea change in American politics.
I think both things can be true, where it's a remarkable accomplishment if he ends up winning, as projections show. But if he has less than a majority of the vote, then people will say, look, it was a three-way race. That if it had been mano-a-mano, him against one opponent, maybe he doesn't win. And Kathy Hochul early on was making very negative noises about a lot of the proposals that Zohran was putting forward.
And then she endorsed him.
But even at that event, some people were yelling, various Zohran ideas at her, and she didn't exactly
tax the rich, I believe.
I think they were saying, let's go Bills, or Brandon. I can't remember. I think you're 100% right, Mr. Yang, about New York is weird, and I love you, New York. I love you. I love New York. It's weird. It's very different from the rest of the country. But we get to see, to your point, Loudoun County, Virginia, right? If you're looking for one place that's on the ballot tonight,
right,
that where we can see it, Loudoun County, Virginia is as much like the places where the midterm battlegrounds, it is as much like the places that decide the presidential elections. You could hardly ask for a better place. And right now in Loudoun County, Virginia, it's happening for Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic candidate, but it's not quite happening for Jay Jones, the Democratic candidate for Attorney General. The lesson here seems to be candidate quality matters. And Democrats, whatever happens tonight, let's say Democrats have a fantastic night. If they walk away from this and say Trump's enough, it's just enough that there's enough opposition to Trump and people are upset about the way things are, that's not a sufficient answer. And the delta right there in Loudoun County ought to be a lesson for Democrats. Candidate quality matters, message matters, and all of that jazz.
Well, and there's also, listen, with all these races and all these elections that are happening today, everybody is looking to see, what does this mean for the Democratic Party writ large? What does this mean for next year in the 2026 midterm elections? And I agree with you. I don't think that New York City can be seen as, because a socialist has won this mayoralty, this is emblematic of really far left progressive socialist candidates nationwide taking over state houses and city halls and you know, writ large, and Congress seats writ large. There's a real battle there. Chuck Schumer never endorsed Zohran Mamdani. Hakeem Jeffries waited until the very last moment to endorse Zohran Mamdani. There was a lot of discomfort among mainstream Democrats with Zohran Mamdani, and there will continue to be. And the big question will be, with all these massive promises that Mamdani has made, if in fact he's elected tonight, and can he deliver on any of these? And when does the bloom come off the rose if people are saying, hold on, where's my free stuff? And it doesn't come.
But to your point, the left will not wait that long. There's going to be this, this vigor that springs from a Mamdani victory, regardless of what's happening here on the ground in New York. But to your point, I think that the Abigail Spanberger, former CIA operative, kind of up the middle, seems very pragmatic. I think that's a more winning profile in the swing states, in the suburbs. But people are going to take a very different lesson from Zohran's victory tonight if he does win.
If you just think about, though, what you said as well, is Trump enough? And for Mamdani, that was the opposite, right? Zohran Mamdani was able to articulate what he was for. Now, we can argue whether that's going to work in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, or Loudoun County,
or whether it's even realistic.
Or even if it's possible. Or if it ends up looking like Caracas, Venezuela. But nevertheless, he was able to articulate things he was for.
Yeah.
Is that not a message for Democrats that they have to be for something rather than just against Trump?
I think for Democrats, including folks like Abigail Spanberger, hammering the affordability message, saying, look,
that's
where I was
families are
struggling.
Well, that was Mamdani's message.
Is the problem. And like being from the moderate wing of the Democratic Party does not preclude hammering that message because it travels very, very well.
What
it's traveling even into the Republican
is actually
Party.
the least good thing he had going for him. It helped with young people. That is not a great model for the rest of the country. You know, let's bank on the young people. It'd be great if you could. But having had to study this the way I have to kind of figure out what was going on with my brother is not what Democrats want to be right now. He does not check their boxes. They want rage. They want muscular. Look, I mean, Andrew's a tough guy, but what they want is what Newsom is doing, what AOC says about Trump. The more the more vulgar the attack on him, the more they like it.
I'm sorry, Zohran Mamdani, at least in a number of the speeches I watched, never said the word Donald Trump.
I know. But this is why I think they're excited about this movement. I don't think it's about Mamdani for them.
It's
and
about
I think that his promises were the least. It is the mirror formation of MAGA. Now we're the angry ones. We have affordability. We want to disrupt. We want to destroy it. And we like that you don't like our mascot. We like that the system hates him. We like that he's a disruptor and an outsider, just like it was with Trump. All right, I'm getting yelled at, not because of what I'm saying, but because of time. So we're just minutes away from the polls closing. So let's take a break. We'll come back and check in with big places that keep developing our understanding of where we are as a people. Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and of course, as soon as the polls close here in New York City at 9 o'clock, we're going to get a huge basket of votes just minutes after that, and then we'll know the story of the night. Stay with News Nation.
All right, welcome back. A live look at the Republican and Democratic headquarters in Virginia. Fair to say that the party with the Democrats is going to be happening a lot more tonight. First and only team to call both the Virginia and Lieutenant Governor's race now for the Democrat, DDHQ, once again, Decision Desk HQ, once again, far out in front of their competitors with good reason. The race to watch, the Virginia Attorney General's race, Democrat Jay Jones leading Jason Miyares with 26% of the vote. As you might remember, Jay Jones was shown to be on text message saying some of the most vile things we have ever heard a politician say, specifically about killing other politicians and hoping their children die in their mother's arms, yet still, as we see, he is leading. Representative Zohran Mamdani of Virginia is with us. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you. you think about the fact that Virginia has gone the opposite way of the White House for the governor's mansion, 11 of the past 12 elections. Why should anybody look at this race in the Democratic's victory there for the governor and lieutenant governor's race and say anything other than par for the course?
I think I was at the polls today, and I think it's pretty clear that there's a clear rejection of Donald Trump's policies. We're talking about people coming and talking about the economy, saying that they are lifelong Republicans and are never voting Republican again. These are some of the things that I heard at the polls today. It's certainly for us, federal workers and contractors, getting furloughed has been, particularly hard for our economy. But I think you're going to see that this is a nationwide trend now, a complete reversal from last year when it comes to the rejection of Donald Trump and the fact that people are just fed up with the policies coming out of D.C. right now.
Congressman, it's Elizabeth Vargas. How much do you think, if anything, can we read into what that energy that you're describing you saw at the polls today and that we perhaps are seeing right now in these election returns, at least in the state of Virginia? How much do you think we can read from that about as we look forward to next year's midterm elections?
I think you can read a lot. There's two things that seems to be happening. One, very blue areas, the Commonwealth, like Falls Church, Virginia, had really, really high turnout. People were really, really motivated to come out in this off-year election. And then some of the rural parts of the state that were solidly Trump for so many years were solidly Trump again, but their turnout wasn't nearly as high. Even compared to the last governor's race. The turnout generally is that the shine on Donald Trump and even the red areas is starting to wear off as farmers see, soybeans being not sold and their farm subsidies going by the wayside, and this administration not treating rural communities the way they said that they would. So I'm seeing it all over. It's a trend all over the state, no matter if you're in a rural area, suburban, or urban.
Okay, Congressman, I'm sorry, we're having a tiny bit of issue with your audio, but I think we got most of what you said. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Obviously, the soybean farmers perhaps got a bit of a reprieve last week after China agreed to buy some soybeans, starting back on that process. But this is a fascinating night to watch in terms of what this might mean, not just what's going on in the country right now, but what it might mean as we look forward. Really appreciate you joining us tonight. Congressman from Virginia, Democrat from Virginia, thank you so much. We will be right back with much more of our special election night coverage as we take a look at DDHQ Data Center. They're crunching the numbers, and we'll have all the latest when we come back.
Or they're drafting. All right, welcome back to our special coverage here at News Nation. Now, what we're watching right now is what happened near the airport in Louisville. This is a UPS plane, crashed. The information that we have was that there was a problem on takeoff. There is no allegation or information of anything that was done to this plane. But as you can see, very dramatic pictures. Why? It was fully loaded with fuel. It was going to take off for a long flight, to Hawaii. So here's what we know. 3 people have been killed because of this. 11 are injured. 2 are missing. All of these numbers, as is almost always the case in any kind of tragedy, it's early. Numbers will likely change. And the fire is still burning, which is not a surprise. It is not easy to put out a jet fuel fire. We will stay on it. We'll give you information about why it happened and what it means as we go throughout the night. But again, I say good evening to all of you. Thank you to the second hour of our election night coverage in America on News Nation. I know if you're getting new to the vibe of being with us here at News Nation with DDHQ, we have a tendency to call things early because DDHQ is very sophisticated and very good at what they do. So we have called the Virginia governor's race. We were the first to do so. And now as polls start to close across the country, 6 different states, New Jersey is one to watch here in East in the eastern part of the United States. We are going to start getting more results and talking more about what's happening. And of course, New Jersey is about the governor's race there. Mikie Sherrill versus Mr. Chitterelli, who the president was trying to help late late last night.
But we should note, I mean, there are elections going on in 31 states across the country. This is a nationwide thing. And of course, on the West Coast, we have that very big measure, Prop 50, on the ballot in California, which is expected to pass handily. This is California Governor Gavin Newsom's effort to, as he puts it, offset the redistricting that went on in the state of Texas to give Republicans more seats in Congress if this passes tonight, and it is expected to pretty resoundingly. This will give California perhaps 5 more Democratic seats, and the governor is hoping that will offset.
Another move that I thought played to Democrats risking becoming what they say they oppose.
Right.
And I was wrong, because Newsom became more popular for doing 50. 50 has been very popular, Proposition 50, among Democrats. And it seems that they believe that you have to fight fire with fire.
The other part about Proposition 50, and I think this also is what we're seeing certainly in the Virginia race and in the New Jersey race, it is being set up as a referendum on Donald Trump. I was in California this past weekend.
You just came back.
I did, and I think I can now recite the Proposition 50 ads, because I was watching football on Sunday, and it was all you saw, and it was only yes on 50. The amount of money that has been poured into this as a referendum on Donald Trump. You saw Abigail Spanberger trying to turn the Virginia race, and we just heard that interview, trying to turn this into a referendum on Trump. Same with Mikie Sherrill in New Jersey, trying to use that playbook. Those are the 3 races that way. I will get Sir Steyerwalt's view of this. At least as of last night, Prop 50 in California was polling worse than Kamala Harris did. So for the
what do you mean worse?
Meaning that it is likely that Prop 50 will succeed by less of a margin than Kamala Harris did in California. And that's with all the money, and that's with framing it as a referendum on Trump.
I will be curious to see that. I don't know. I know that last week Gavin Newsom actually put out a message saying, please stop sending money. We don't need any more money for any more. We've got so much money on Prop 50, we can't spend it all. So it's going, I don't know, it'll be very interesting to see what
people don't like gerrymandering. They don't like gerrymandering. They don't like it in Texas, and they don't like it in California, but they'll do it to get what they want. Right, because of the politics of power. So people in California don't feel good about doing it, but they're going to do it because we live in an all or nothing political world where either you win every election. The president recently said basically, we're just going to win every election from now on. He was calling for nuking the filibuster, which is a crazy idea if you think you're ever going to be in the minority again. And he said, we'll just never be in the minority again. We just have to win always and forever.
Easy to say as a short timer.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, when you don't have to win a second term. But if you go back to, I think, where you look at Prop 50 and this, the fact that it's being sort of cast as this referendum on Donald Trump is something that Democrats are going to have to figure out what comes next after that, because that, you can sort of do that in the midterms coming up. Beyond that, you really can't.
So we're starting to get vote in New Jersey right now. And just as 4 years ago, the elections in New Jersey and Virginia were correctly understood as a referendum on what was going on with Democrats, Joe Biden, COVID policy, inflation, this is also a referendum on Donald Trump. Prop 50 is a weird thing that's going on out in California.
It's
we love you,
uniquely California.
We love you, California, but it's weird. These 2 states going back to the 19th century, right? This
Virginia and New Jersey.
Virginia and New Jersey. This is what it is, right? So we get to watch tonight in key counties and key precincts in these places. So right now, the vote is starting to just pour in New Jersey. And we can go and we can look right across the river. We can look in Hudson County. And Jack Ciattarelli is not getting the number yet, right? He's coming up a little bit short. We can't extrapolate everything about 2026 out of this stuff, but these are the counties and these are the places that Republicans saw the big gains last year.
Right.
And Jack Ciattarelli doesn't have to do as well as Donald Trump did.
I will.
But he has to do better than he did last.
I'll give you one more thing in terms of what this referendum on Donald Trump could do. You have the Virginia governor's race that we've obviously already called, DDHQ's called very early for Spanberger. The idea, though, that Jay Jones, who is about as deplorable of a political candidate as you could find at Central Casting, with text messages talking about how he wants to kill the Speaker of the House of Virginia and watch the Speaker of the House's children die in their mother arms, is still winning. And if that doesn't say about the tribal politics that you talk about,
we are in the era of yeah, but
Yeah, and a referendum on Donald Trump.
Yeah, but zero-sum, and we haven't even said a word yet. I want to bring in Bill O'Reilly. He will have a different take on what I'm about to say. But
you think
one of the words that popped in every sample that I saw across the country for Democrats, tariffs. Tariffs are hitting people, and even if they aren't hitting people, people are wrong about how they think they're hitting them. I'm not saying they're wrong, but even if they're using it as a rationale for why business is down, prices are up, money is tighter, why they're so pissed at the rich. Tariffs keeps coming up. That's something else that will be on Trump's ledger in terms of a referendum.
Well, especially as we have the Supreme Court take up these arguments tomorrow about whether or not he can even
That's exactly right. We're going to be covering it really heavily. The law of it is different than the politics of it. But here's the man himself, Mr. O'Reilly, author of Confronting Evil, an appropriate theme for our elections almost every time we have them, but I wonder how it applies for Mr. O'Reilly tonight. It's good to see you, sir. How do you see what we've seen?
Well, I don't see anybody evil. I mean, I see misguided all over the place. I disagree with all of you.
And you don't even know what we said.
Yeah, I've been watching Cuomo, and I can, unlike you, I can absorb information. This has nothing to do with the midterms, zero. And the reason is so many things are going to happen between now and this time next year. And it's going to be a completely different country than it is now. Now, I can't predict which way that's going to go.
Then how do you know it's going to be a completely different country?
Because there are so many things that have to be decided. There are too many undecideds. And you can start with the Supreme Court ruling on the tariffs. You can start on that. And they'll rule in Donald Trump's favor because of the 1974 law that Gerald Ford signed into. And they have to. The Supreme Court can't change the law. It has to uphold what's already been in precedent. Now, they'll rein Trump in a little bit, but that will give Trump then a free field to see if in the next 8 months the tariffs can kick in to bring prices down and to help people. That's what the midterms are all about. It's about economics here. It's not about China. It's not even about Putin. It's about that. In Virginia, you can't read much into it because the Republican candidate, with all due respect, because I do respect her for running, was terrible. And the Democrats are much more motivated in the northern part of the Commonwealth because they hate Trump so much. And the MAGA people in the rural areas, they weren't, you're going to see that the turnout in Virginia was so-so. But the candidate now has to have sizzle, has to have pop. We've changed. Calvin Coolidge could never get elected.
Cool cow.
Okay? You've got to have some charisma. That's what Mamdani's running on. Just that he, you know, if you watch the Saturday Night Live parody on him, they nailed him because he's walking in, I'm this, I'm that. He's got high energy, smiling all the time. And that means a lot to people who don't know a lot. And unfortunately, the Republican in Virginia was flat and never, ever caught fire. So I predicted that, one of the few I did predict. But if people think that tonight is going to give any indication about 11 months, 12 months from now, they're misguided, Cuomo.
Okay. I'll take your take on it. Let me put it to the table, and you can hear the reactions. Chris Stirewalt. Look, I would argue that on Bill's theory, Mamdani is the answer to Trump for angry people on the left. He is a guy who is seen as unconventional, super charismatic in a way that puts some people off, that some people resonate, hated by the system, wants to disrupt the system, and seems to be the enemy of the enemy. That's why I believe he didn't start the movement, nor did Trump. But he may become the mascot of it.
Well, the great thing about angry populism is it continues to break a system that frustrates people, which causes people to be more frustrated, which causes them to be more susceptible to the blandishments of angry populism. So it's a self-licking ice cream cone because nothing ever gets better, and the worse it gets, the more people are susceptible to demagoguery and all of that stuff. But I will say this. 8 years ago, Ed Gillespie, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, Easy Ed, a good candidate, well-funded, all of that stuff. He got 45% of the vote in Virginia, running for governor. Winsome Earl Sears is getting what? 45% of the vote in Virginia. This is it. This is Virginia says, and they said it last year, or they said it 4 years ago. They vote against the party in power. They typically vote for change. We should remember, though, that 4 years ago, Glenn Youngkin's victory was an upset. Terry McAuliffe was the favored guy. He had led narrowly in the polls, and Youngkin delivered an upset in a state that has gotten increasingly Democratic. But I don't think Winsome Earle-Sears is doing a bad job. She's just getting the share of the vote that a Republican was going to probably get in Virginia no matter what.
You think we misread Virginia because of Trump's overperforming there in the last election?
Well, I think
and therefore we're misreading what it might all mean.
I think it was Youngkin more than anything.
Okay, and Glenn Youngkin was a once-in-a-generation kind of talent and candidate. When I saw him out on the stump, it certainly appeared that way.
The vest is good. People like the vest.
It was a strong vest, and he's tall, too. That helps. Kind of like Bill O'Reilly as well, but no vest. Bill, this would be the question to you. You say that everyone's misreading this because they're trying to put it as trying to look out to next year and what it means for the midterms. Let's look back. If a year ago, when we all sat around here and announced, DDHQ being the first, to announce that Donald Trump was going to be elected the 47th president of the United States, I had followed that up and said, but oh wait, I predict that somehow there is going to be a socialist who becomes mayor of New York by being Hamas adjacent and promising everybody free buses, freezing rent, and state-run grocery stores. You would have also said you have no idea what you're talking about, Vitter, which you do every night, because you don't know what's going to happen in that year, right? What you're saying is no election is predictive.
No, I wouldn't have said that because of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who will beat Schumer. Schumer's not going to run again. He'll hang it up just like Pelosi's hanging it up tomorrow. Because Cortez proved to me, and I'm a New Yorker, that just charisma can win you an election. The congresswoman from Boston University doesn't know anything. Now, Mamdani knows stuff, but when Mamdani came out and said, you know, I agree with seizing, all right, the mechanics of government, that's a communist tenet. He gave himself away. But the electorate in New York City is so uninformed. The people that are voting for him don't know anything. I don't know whether you watch local news in New York, but they send people out, why are you voting for Mamdani? Why are
Bill, you're making fun of the voters now?
I am. I'm making fun of the voters, Leland, because if you don't know anything, I'm going to use a blandishment. I love that word. Thank you, Steyerwalt, for giving me I'm going to use a blandishment. If you are a dunce, I'm going to call you a dunce.
You would have never said that about the MAGA voters. You would have never said that about the MAGA voters. And it's the same dynamic.
Sure.
They're upset about how the system has been treating them in their estimation.
That is,
and they want someone to go and break it.
You always try to drag me into that swamp, and you don't know what you're talking about, Miss Cleo. You can't read minds.
You guys are so mean to each other.
Cleo was I'm not mean to him. It is all take, no give. The bosses won't let me because they think I'm going to smack them around like a pinata. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. You're always trying to drag me into the MAGA crew. Always. It's ridiculous.
You ever wonder why?
Everybody who pays attention knows that a 34-year-old who has never had a job cannot run a city of 8.5 million when the police hate him. Okay? Everybody knows that.
People said the same things about Trump, that he had never run anything well, and all the people in power hated him. He'll never be able to get anything done.
You said it, but you were the only one because the guy built a real estate empire.
That's not fair. That's not true.
Gentlemen, I'm going to introduce I'm going to interrupt Miss Cleo, Cleo, and Mr. O'Reilly for a race call with Conall McShane.
Lucky for you, Bill.
We have another one. Here we go. Out ahead again. The state of New Jersey has not elected a governor of the same party 3 times in a row since 1961. That trend has been bucked tonight by Mikie Sherrill. She is the winner and the next governor of the state of New Jersey, defeating the Republican Jack Ciattarelli. You see the numbers coming in real time. We're tracking it at 57-32 in favor of Mikie Sherrill. Now, New Jersey, there were a lot of storylines, guys. We could talk about some of this on the maps. We could talk about it throughout the night that we've been highlighting coming in. One of them was that Donald Trump, even though he didn't win the blue state of New Jersey last time around, did much better in 2024 than he did in 2020. He improved by about 10 points. So we're going to look at a lot of these counties. We'll have time to do it throughout the night where Trump did better. Passaic, he was up 18 or 19. And the question was, with Ciattarelli running for the 3rd time for the same office, he ran for governor and lost in the primary. Then he was the nominee, lost by 3 points to Phil Murphy, the governor, be able to match or top Trump? And the answer we're getting is no, probably not.
He doesn't have to match or top Trump. For New Jersey Republicans to feel good about tonight, they just need Ciattarelli to do better than he did 4 years ago. Because you can't compare a quadrennial electorate to an off-year cycle, right?
Meaning quadrennial, meaning
a presidential
election.
Presidential year.
It's another fancy word.
The presidential electorate is a third larger than a midterm electorate, and a midterm electorate is about a third or 50% larger than an off-year contest. So this is a much smaller electorate. So that's the right baseline.
What were you looking at? We can look, if we pop the map up, we could look at some counties there, and we could track it one versus the other, where Ciattarelli's coming up short here.
Hudson County. And so when we look at Newark and that part of New Jersey that's closest here to the city, and those are the counties up in that corner of New Jersey there where Donald Trump saw the big boom.
So if you bring up Hudson and we just do a comparison, first of all, it's going to come up with the presidential race where Harris and Trump were. But to your point, we can look at the previous race which Ciattarelli ran in, okay? So right there, he's 25 and 21 and only running at 20%.
Underperforming himself. And that's the question, because this is where these voters are, a lot of non-white voters. This is the fundamental question for MAGA is, if you get these folks, a lot of non-white, basically the argument is working class is working class. Black, white, Hispanic, Latino, whatever, doesn't matter. Working class dudes are working class dudes, and they're going to move toward the Republican Party. There's a ton of those voters right across the river, right?
Well, so two things happened in the presidential election in New Jersey. Those working class dudes that you're describing, they all showed up, not all of them, but a lot of them, and they voted for President Trump.
That's right.
The other thing that happened is all their wives, girlfriends, sisters, aunts, mothers, you know,
they didn't show up for Kamala Harris.
They didn't show up.
That's right.
They sat at home. It wasn't that they voted one way or the other. They didn't vote at all.
Candidates matter.
Candidates matter. So those are two trends to watch to see.
It's an interesting question for O'Reilly if we still have him, right?
We do.
Okay. Bill, in this idea that maybe you can agree with Cuomo on, or Miss Cleo on, that candidates matter, what is the takeaway then from what Steyerwalt just pointed out, that Jack Ciattarelli, who I asked point blank, is there anything you can distance yourself from Donald Trump on, and basically he said no a few times, can't even improve on his own margins?
I'm surprised at the early call. I didn't think Sherrill was such a good candidate at all. And the current governor is unpopular, Murphy. His approval rating is underwater. I thought that it'd be a tighter race. People in New Jersey are angry, though. Taxes are out of control. Insurance costs, very hard to raise a family, particularly in northern New Jersey. And then you have a very strong Democratic machine out of Trenton, which helped Ms. Sherrill immeasurably. But I'm a little surprised about that. The only thing I can ascribe, well, I was just going to get there. The only thing I can ascribe it to is that Trump is a one-man phenomenon. When he's involved in a race, he galvanizes all of the MAGA people and the Republicans to him. The other Republicans, by comparison, don't galvanize. So I think when the numbers are analyzed, you'll see that the Jersey turnout wasn't high enough, all right, to overcome the Democratic machine. Now, this is a guess, but J.D. Vance, for example, and I can go out to 28, is going to have a much harder time than Donald Trump because he's not Trump. He doesn't have that, you know, hold. It's almost like he's hypnotized all of these Americans. And then when he's not there, the motivation to even show up drops. And I think that's what you'll see in Jersey.
Okay. Well, we will see that, and I will talk to you the next time you and I are on the air, Bill, about just that issue, really, whether it was turnout or whether Chitterelli has lost a lot of support. Bill O'Reilly for us tonight. Bill, thank you very much. Mikie Sherrill will win the New Jersey's governor's mansion. Noteworthy, once again, Decision Desk HQ way out in front on the call. Look there at the opposing headquarters. So far, Democrats having a very good night early across the country. Expected. The things that weren't expected. That's next.
All right, there you're looking at the results according to DDHQ of, are these the results that have just come in thus far? But DDHQ has projected Mikie Sherrill to win the governor's race of New Jersey, as we have also predicted and called the race for the governor's race in Virginia for Abigail Spanberger. So both women, both Democrats, both congressmen, class of 2018, both elected tonight in races to be governor of their prospective states. Our own Jessica Cartalia is live from Jack Chitterelli's campaign headquarters in Bridgewater, New Jersey. I'm not sure if folks there, Jessica, have gotten word of DDHQ's always accurate predictions here, but the race has not been called for that camp. Good news is they don't sound like they're crying in their beer quite yet.
No, not just yet, and thank goodness there's an open bar. Everyone is kind of comfortably numb in here, Elizabeth. And it's interesting, you know, we cover so many elections, and usually as soon as the doors open and people start coming in, they're, you know, staring at the monitors around the room, looking at the numbers as they're coming in. Well, they don't even have those polling numbers up. So that just gives you kind of an indication of how things are. But taking a look at Sherrill's camp, a different vibe over there, so to speak. She became the second governor ever of New Jersey. We spoke with several voters today, most of them coming out. We didn't get such a great mix. Most everyone that we spoke to were kind of leaning toward the left in support of Sherrill. This gubernatorial race, though, reaching $200 million in spending, that also shattered a state record. That's how important this race was. This was Chitterelli's third time running for governor. He lost to incumbent Phil Murphy in 2021 by just 3 points. So we thought that this was going to be a lot tighter than it actually was. And then when we saw those early polling numbers coming in, more than 675,000 registered Democrats voted early here in New Jersey compared to just 386,000 Republicans. Chitterelli, Elizabeth, really relying on Trump's base, and so many of the supporters who are coming in here in MAGA hats and wearing their red. And as I'm talking, everybody around us is starting to look at our monitor to check our numbers because News Nation is the first to call this race for Sherrill.
Yeah, we've been the first to call all the races thus far. I'm afraid this is not going to be good news for the Chitterelli campaign headquarters or watch party that you're at. All right, Jessica, thank you so much. We have another, speaking of projections, another call to make from Decision Desk HQ.
All right, Decision Desk HQ now projecting Democrat Jay Jones will win the race for Virginia Attorney General, defeating the incumbent Attorney General in Virginia. And you can see it is a very close race still. But a lot of the vote that is out is in the Northern Virginia suburbs. Those are heavily Democratic suburbs, so that margin, that 2% margin, expected to expand. This shows significant because of the October surprise involving Jay Jones, which were his text messages that talked about killing the Speaker of the House in Virginia and hoping the Speaker of the House's children died in their mother's arms. And still, he has won to be the Attorney General. In terms of, Chris Cuomo, things you often talk about, that tribal politics exist, and you think about, especially those Northern Virginia suburbs, so many people right now very angry at Republicans over the government shutdown, rightly or wrongly. So many people who were fired in DOGE that are government contractors or government employees. Right. You're seeing those numbers really get run up in the Northern Virginia suburbs.
I think it's the but that we were talking about before. But I do think we got to take another step down this road, okay? Because when we were talking about Jay Jones earlier, I agree with you that his texts were about some of the most vulgar, raw things I've seen. I got a number of people who are very active on the left and part of this emerging movement say, will you stop agreeing with him? He was just saying stuff. He's young. It was dumb. And it's okay to be angry about what's happening in this country right now. And you don't seem to get that. Now, I would fight that point all day long about how you express your anger, what's okay, what isn't. They were private messages, they were public messages. I could go through all those things. But maybe you need to examine it in terms of what matters to the group he's trying to get votes from. And maybe they don't care about how much you hate what they see as hateful in this country.
Or maybe they accept it as apology. I don't know. I don't, you know.
I don't want to say that Jay Jones, I guess now we can call him the Attorney General-elect of the Commonwealth of Virginia, is a factotum, an empty suit, but it's pretty close. He's a Nepo baby, a guy whose dad was this towering figure in Virginia politics, civil rights era guy, this big deal. And Jay Jones had an unremarkable legislative career, got into the House of Delegates, gave up the seat to run for Attorney General and lost. He was out of the Attorney Generalship when he sent these texts. And these texts were not like fantasy texts about, I wish I could kill these people. He was torturing a former Republican House of Delegates member. She said, please, Jay, stop. And he's like, you know, the funny joke about you put, you know, Pol Pot and Stalin or whatever, and who gets the bullets? It's always blah, 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 blah. So I don't disagree with anything that you guys are saying, but I would just say, I don't think people in Virginia care about Jay Jones very much. I don't think that they probably thought about him very much.
They were just voting for a Democrat.
Right, they were picking that team over that team.
But I still think it takes us to the same place. And we'll bring in Dave Bossy now, who understands what's happening within the Republicans and how to see this as well as anybody. But it's good to see you, Dave, president of Citizens United. I was deputy campaign manager for the Trump campaign in 2016. Very important guy in that world. It's good to have you, Dave. It's been a second since we spoke. The left is now the party of the outrage. As MAGA was in 2015, they are now outraged. They want to destroy the system. They want to come, and they want people to be muscular in doing that. Sounds very familiar to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is, I'll be honest, I'm shocked of this Jones victory. I'm a little disappointed that the race has been called with what are we, about 40,000 votes margin, but this is really, to be honest, it's disgusting. Jay Jones winning, and I know what you guys are talking about here, and I agree that they did pull the ballot, the lever for the Democrat. They didn't think about it. Maybe those are excuses that they want to use, but voting for somebody who dreamt of political violence upon not only the Speaker of the House, but his children is no less than the most grotesque thing, especially.
But Dave, I hear you. I hear you, especially after what happened to Charlie Kirk. But I got to tell you something, brother. We've known each other a long time. So many people said the same thing about Trump getting the nomination and Trump having success, that this was being rewarded, this kind of guy. I'm just telling you. I heard the same things there.
Chris, I'm not going to listen. That's all well and good. Donald Trump had 2 assassination attempts on him. He didn't go out and tell anybody to kill anybody. Those are not the same arguments. It's not even the same debate. This is what Jay Jones did is disqualifying. So
I hear you.
For the Virginia voters to do this is, quite honestly, I wish Bill O'Reilly back on with us, because he would have some interesting words for the dunces in Virginia, as he said. So this is a very disappointing night just in that race alone.
Dave Bossie, always appreciate you making the case. Thank you very much. And there is no question. The faster we can get out of the mode of wishing violence on our opponents, the better the country will be. Now, Abigail Spanberger just took the stage in Richmond, Virginia. She won. She is a very different kind of Democrat and winning proposition for the party. Let's listen.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. My fellow Virginians, tonight we sent a message. We sent a message to every corner of the Commonwealth, a message to our neighbors and our fellow Americans across the country. We sent a message to the whole world that in 2025, Virginia chose pragmatism over partisanship. We chose our Commonwealth over chaos. You all chose leadership that will focus relentlessly on what matters most: lowering costs, keeping our communities safe, and strengthening our economy for every Virginian. Leadership that will focus on problem solving, not stoking division. We chose leadership that will always put Virginia first. And Virginia, I cannot wait to get to work for you. Tonight we turned a page. We turned that page by listening to our neighbors, focusing on practical results, laying out a clear agenda, and leading with decency and determination. To everyone who helped us achieve this win, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. I thank you for the trust that you have placed in me, and it is the honor of my lifetime to be elected the 75th governor of the Commonwealth. I would like to thank my opponent for a hard-fought race, the Lieutenant Governor's story, her military service, and her years of service here in Virginia deserve our respect and our gratitude, and I ask that you join me in wishing her and her family well. I also know that those who were supporting my opponent are disappointed today. And to those Virginians who did not vote for me, I want you to know that my goal and my intent is to serve all Virginians. And that means that I will listen to you, I will work for you and with you. That is the approach that I've taken throughout my entire career. I have worked with anyone and everyone, regardless of political party, to deliver results for the people that I serve. And that's because I believe in this idea that there is so much more that unites us as Virginians and as Americans than divides us. And I know in my heart that we can unite for Virginia's future, and we can set an example for the rest of the nation. Our founders understood this from the very beginning. They didn't choose to call Virginia a Commonwealth by accident. They chose it to signify that our government would be based on the power of the people united for a common good. Not for a political party, not for a president, not for a monarch, but for a common good, together. And tonight, Virginia proved that that tradition is alive and well. We are still a Commonwealth.
So, Abigail Spanberger, now governor-elect in Virginia, speaking from Richmond, having a very powerful night. The question is, what does it mean? I'll tell you what she presents as a good counterfactual to something we have been discussing with here. She is not a radical. She's someone who doesn't believe in using the word socialism. She was in Congress, so much for the stain of that. She worked for the CIA. So she presents a very different picture of what can be popular. But, of course, Virginia is a little bit of a tricky state to analyze in terms of what it means for the midterm. So let's get more conversation going about what the night means and doesn't mean. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, he's going to join us and discuss about what this night means right after this. Good to have you, Senator. All right, we're looking at the U.S. Capitol. Why? Because they're paying attention. That's why, even though this is an off-year election, but it is a window into where the country is heading in to the midterms, all right? And what are one of the things that matters in this? Dysfunction in Washington. The shutdown still going on, maybe the longest ever, all right? Now, what will this mean, these elections tonight, in terms of the two sides and what they think is their potential leverage? Will Democrats believe that if they have a good night, which they're having so far, it means they don't have to give on the shutdown? Senator Mark Wayne Mullen joins us now, Republican, Oklahoma, member of the Appropriations Committee. Good to see you, sir. What do you make of what tonight means in terms of the state of play with the shutdown?
I don't know if it changes a whole lot, Chris. I know Dick Durbin last week wanted to break away, and Sherman in a private meeting told him if he hangs tight, that they'll release him after the election. He was afraid, Chuck Schumer, I mean, was afraid that they would, if they opened the government last week, that they would, their party would be upset and not turn out to vote tonight. So I believe this just ratifies their situation, that they're going to fight the fight that they thought they needed to fight for their party. They use the American people as leverage. I mean, they were open about that, and we're going to reopen the government this week.
Let me ask you a quick thing, then I'm going to open it up to the better minds that we have here. So originally, the administration had said, no SNAP, we're not going to use the reserve fund. They start a lawsuit. The judges make it clear that the law applies to the reserve fund. The USDA says we're going to release the reserve fund. It's not going to be full SNAP benefits, but we're going to use them. The president echoes that. The president then today says, no. None of those until the Democrats give us a different deal on what the SNAP benefit levels are. We're not releasing any of it. Thank you for attention to this matter. Do you think that's the right move?
Well, I'm not sure the president does have the authority to do it. There's been conflicting court cases on this. I think the White House now has come out and said they're going to try doing it, but it's going to take some time. I will imagine by the time that takes place, we'll probably have the government reopened. I will predict, Chris, we'll open the government, we'll take the vote. We'll have to have some changes to it because the date will have to be changed. We might add some appropriation bills to it. So we'll take the vote probably Thursday. The House will either vote on Friday or Saturday, and so the government will reopen then. I will say we'll probably have it fully funded by then. And the truth is, The SNAP program could have been funded at any time, Chris, if the Dems would just simply voted for the clean CR that they wrote when Chuck Schumer was in office. So this whole thing that Trump could or couldn't do it, I don't think, because it's a line item. And Chris, you know this. SNAP was a line item that we specifically appropriate a few dollars for USDA to say that they had the funds to be able to backfill it. Actually, I don't know if they had the authority to do that. However, Congress probably won't weigh in because politically it wouldn't be a good thing. But if you look at the way the law is written, that is for disaster relief. The USDA has that in case of an emergency. And I guess you could probably say that SNAP is an emergency, but it has never been used that way before because we've been in this shutdown before. When Obama did this in 2013, he didn't make funds available for the SNAP program. He shut down the entire government. And so this has never happened before, but that's the same time we've never been in this long of a shutdown before either.
But Senator, to Chris's question just now, what did you make? President Trump today didn't say, I can't fund the food stamp program. He said, I'm not going to do it. Do you support the president in his refusal to do that?
Liz, I think you've got to look at all the True Social posts that he put out. He said there was conflicting answers, and he was still, before that statement came out, he also said there was conflicting court reports, and he's looking for a clear path before he does anything. I didn't see another court rule on this. I thought they were still waiting on it. However, the press came back out, or I say the press, the White House came back out and said that they were looking for a path forward, but it was going to take some time. So I believe they went ahead and moved and said they were going to do it, but I don't think they can do it fast enough. I believe that the government will be open by then. However, the Democrats are making a big deal out about this, trying to think that it's President Trump's fault that the SNAP program didn't go out. And the truth is, it's their fault. They should have already opened the government. We're not asking them to vote on anything that they haven't already voted on 13 times underneath Biden and 4 times on this exact same CR.
And Senator, once the government is reopened, what is your position on extending these Obamacare ACA subsidies? This was the heart of the fight. This is the reason why the Democrats refused to vote on the CR, and that shut the government down. What is your position, given the fact that you have constituents you represent who are on that insurance plan?
Well, Liz, I don't think the shutdown was ever about the premium tax. Remember, the Democrats are the ones that wrote this, and they made it to expire. Not a single Republican voted on this in 2021. Chuck Schumer was controlling the Senate, Nancy Pelosi was controlling the House, and Biden was in the White House. They're the ones that made them expire. And what they're trying to do is try to make the Affordable Health Care Act affordable, and it's not affordable. We know it's unaffordable. So as far as trying to prop up the unaffordable health care, I'm not interested in that. I am interested, like President Trump said, let's sit down and get health care that actually is affordable by the American people. And there's no one that can argue that affordable health care is affordable. Remember,
right, but you got to come up with a plan.
President Biden or President Obama goes out and says that it was supposed to drop premiums by 25%. Instead, we've had 221% increase. So it's time we actually get health care working for the American people, not band-aiding the unaffordable health care.
All right. A plan needs to happen, though, I think, because I know you know as well as anybody that President Trump has been complaining about this plan for many, many years, but we don't have a plan from President Trump. And most Americans would tell you they pay too much. Senator Markwayne Mullin, always great to talk to you. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really, really appreciate it.
Big race. We're going to take a break. Yep. When we come back, New York City's going to have a new mayor. Who's it going to be, and what does it mean for the rest of the country? The polls are going to be closing, and we'll be right here for the big dump of ballots. Stay with News Nation. Welcome back to News Nation's special coverage of the elections, Decision Desk 2025. We are just, I'll wait for it, boom. Polls just closed in New York City. That means, as is the tradition, the way in New York City, we're going to get a huge dump of votes that will allow DDHQ to call the mayor's race that is between three men: Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee, my brother, Andrew Cuomo, running as an independent, and Curtis Sliwa, who's running as the Republican. So we're going to know that. The whole country has been watching it. I believe it is a window into where Democrats will be for the midterms, the reaction movement to MAGA. But maybe I'm wrong. DDHQ is crunching the numbers as we speak. So welcome back to our coverage. You have me, you have Elizabeth Vargas, you have Leland Vittert, and you have Chris Stirewalt. But most importantly, right now, you have Connell McShane at the wall to give us a little insight into what we've seen so far and why it's happening.
I think the New Jersey story that's emerging, at least, you know, when you dig into the numbers a little bit, is interesting, right? Because think about what happened in New Jersey in the last election, presidential year last year. That Donald Trump did 10 points better in New Jersey 2024 than he did in 2020. Now, Mikie Sherrill, we've already called the race for her. Where is she outperforming is what I find the most fascinating. In other words, Trump did better in a lot of majority-minority counties in New Jersey. We have a lot of black voters, a lot of Hispanic voters, and those are the places that Mikie Sherrill is doing really well right now. Counties like Essex and, you know, to some extent we've seen it in Hudson County as well. But if you bring up Essex for one example, you see Sherrill's numbers at 74, almost 75%. But when we compare that to what Trump did, or where Harris was, she's running ahead of Harris. But Chris Stirewalt has made this point a number of times already. Is that Jack Ciattarelli is also running behind himself, not by as much here as in other places, but this is the one of the interesting counties. You see where it is right here in and around Newark, New Jersey, where you have a number of black voters, far higher than the state average, almost 40%, and Hispanic voters at almost 26%. So that's one place to watch. I think similar from a demographic point of view, if you just bring up Hudson, and this is again the census data, Hispanic voters are going to be really important in this election. Trump did better with them last time than he did in 2020. 42% of the vote there in Hudson County is Hispanic, and Mikie Sherrill's having a terrific night there. It's 75% of the vote coming in, and again, she's running ahead, significantly so, of where Harris was. Wow. And Ciattarelli in Hudson County is running behind where he was. So these are just big numbers that she's been able to put up in places where Trump did better. I mean, Trump went up by 18 in Hudson, went up by 10.5 in Essex versus, you know, one election to the next. And Ciattarelli, you know, is underperforming even himself.
Passaic County?
Yeah, but we don't have numbers, I don't believe, in yet.
See that empty gray spot at the top of the state? That's Passaic County. And we would love to have some numbers in Passaic County, because if we had numbers in Passaic County, it would tell us how exurban voters are, because Passaic County split, right?
You see Trump's numbers there.
Yeah.
And they went up 18, 19 points from 24 compared to what he did in 20.
You know, Stirewalt said wow, which is hard to get a wow out of him unless it involves some kind of food reference.
That's not nice.
It's true, though. Or candy. But I was hoping, can we pull up the county where we got a wow out of Stirewalt? Because
you're talking about Hudson or Essex? Probably Hudson.
I think it was Hudson County, where you had all of a sudden Mikie Sherrill outperforming Kamala Harris by 13% in a plurality Hispanic county.
It's the same thing that we're seeing also in places like Manassas, Virginia, that have these large Hispanic populations. And look, both parties make a mistake of treating Hispanic voters as monolithic. Hispanic voters are not like black voters. Because where you are, what your ancestry, country of ancestral origin is, all of these other things go into it. We have to learn as demographers and in politics to understand Hispanic voters the same way we once understood Italian American voters, Eastern and Southern European voters. Culture is important, but it's not the only defining factor.
As the only Latina here, that is something that always drives people who are Hispanic crazy. You know, Cubans are very different from people who are from Mexico, from Puerto Ricans, from Venezuelans,
But
it's a very different thing.
All of that having been said, if there is, we have the DDHQ numbers that talk about, do you feel better off than you did a year ago? And I find these numbers utterly fascinating, because the Republican theory of the case last year was that economically disadvantaged Hispanic voters didn't care about immigration. They didn't care about these other issues. They cared about
pocketbook issue.
Exactly. How much? What was their take-home pay? How far did their dollar go? How far could they go on the sweat of their brows and the work that they did and all of that jazz? Those voters are telling Republicans that they are worse off than they were a year ago.
That's why the president keeps coming up with creative ways to have different conversations. All right, Connell, what do you got for us?
We have the call in the New York City mayor's race at 5 past the hour after the polls had closed. And Zohran Mamdani, the 34-year-old Democratic Socialist, is the winner, as expected, and will be the next mayor here in New York City. Numbers coming in early. The check mark is next to Mamdani, and he ran a campaign after, winning in a crowded Democratic primary field that was impressive to many, driven by the youth vote here in New York City. On the left side of the Democratic Party, without a doubt, as you look at his campaign headquarters. And now Mamdani, just turning 34 years of age, will be the next mayor in the largest city in the country. Those are some early figures coming in, bottom of the screen, 51.7%, with Andrew Cuomo at just under 40% and Curtis Sliwa at 8%. Again, early numbers, but the projection, given the data that we had, was more than enough to make this decision, and make this decision early in the night.
And these numbers are interesting because if they hold true on, is this breakdown? We just are projecting him to win the race. We're
That's
not.
right.
These are
This
just
is
based on nothing.
But
okay.
But no, New York gives a big dump right after you get all the early
You already have almost 750,000.
That's probably most of the early vote.
Yeah. Right. And so look, this will be a record turnout year. These are a big basket of votes. If this percentage structure stays the same, it answers the question of the mandate.
Right. That's
if Mamdani, which means that he did even better.
Well,
in
we don't
this
know that
election
yet.
than he did. But I'm saying if it holds, it becomes a very interesting plus-minus for him, because there's the promise versus the promises kept, which can be tricky, especially because a mayor's not as powerful as a president or a governor. But I do think you have to talk about why. And even I can see what this is about. And of course, I wanted my brother to win. I believe in my brother. I think he's a tremendous operator within government. But he's not what Democrats want right now in their party, and Democrats win in New York City, Chris. I mean, that's the one-line analysis is the Democrat was going to win in New York City. But the type of Democrat and what they want, I do believe there's a metaphor here as a reaction to MAGA, and this is what we'll see in the midterms. But I guess that's fought by Virginia and New Jersey in terms of who they elected.
I certainly take your point, but I will also say that I watched Mamdani run like he was behind for the closing weeks of this race. And there was an interesting pivot moment where he realized he was going to have to take your brother seriously, right? So he was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to actually have to do this. He did a closing ad that I thought, one of his closing ads that I thought was really revealing. He played clips of Fox News, and he said, I'm not what they say I am. And I thought, well, either this is a guy who is seeing something that I haven't seen yet, and he's actually scared, or this is a guy who's like, I don't want to leave any votes on the table. I want to go after every voter. I want to go after moderates. I want to go after whatever. He has now convinced a substantial share of New York voters, and starting with that core group of enthusiastic young socialists who want it to be radical, who want the things that you say, right? Rage against the machine and all of that. But his general election campaign was very much oriented toward growing the tent, expanding all of that. My question is, as a non-New Yorker, what happens tomorrow? Because he's built this coalition, impressive as it is, that includes angry people and non-angry people. Can he govern? Can he keep that coalition together to govern a city?
Is it an unfair standard, as somebody whose brother just lost the race, to see, well, let's see what he delivers, other than Giuliani, okay, which was really about 9/11 and getting rid of the squeegee guys before that, all right? Rudy was in big trouble, okay, before 9/11, and there was a power vacuum because the governor didn't step up right away, so there was an opportunity for Rudy, and he took it, and he did brilliantly. What does a mayor of New York City really get known for? Is it too tough a standard to say, will Mamdani be able to deliver these things? Like, he doesn't really have the power or the checkbook.
I think about it this way. It's I'm sorry, America, to make a sports analogy in politics, but I can't resist this one. Where do you want to be the starting quarterback? Where do you want to be the star pitcher? Do you want to do it in St. Louis, a superior
No, you
baseball,
want to be in New York City.
a superior baseball program? But no, you want to do it in New York City. But unfortunately, the problem is the same people who will love you and lift you on their shoulders, and the local press that will give you all of this acclaim, and you will get to be the flavor of the month in a millisecond.
They will turn
on you, and it starts to go the other direction.
Isn't that the part of this is what I think what you're saying is what happened to Bill de Blasio? Because
Bill de Blasio was he was elected with a tiny percentage of the vote.
Nobody ever liked him.
Nobody ever liked him.
This guy has people who like him.
Yeah. There is two very different.
Blasio is easy to dislike, to be honest. This guy,
you are though what Rudy Giuliani said. You are America's mayor. There are a number of states that are smaller than New York City.
Yes.
Every major news organization in America has either a large presence or a headquarters in New York City. What happens here plays out in the world in an excised way. Therefore, what I would say is that, to your point, Chris, that what Mamdani does matters for the entire country. What he does or does not do is going to be amplified way more. And a mayor may not have a lot to control, but just look at how much crime in New York City brought on by Bill de Blasio's problems resonated all over the country.
But it also, you know, when we talk about what happened here, there's reporting out there that President Trump was more animated and more obsessively watching this particular race than he was any of the other races on tonight.
Look, I think the hometown's part of it.
And he has been tweeting incessantly about it. He endorsed your brother, said it would be a huge mistake to vote for Mamdani. There's a question about what this means in terms of, will we see more ICE raids in New York City? Will we see the National Guard be sent to New York City? What's going to happen with crime in New York City? Because a lot of New York City police officers detest Mamdani and have threatened to quit in droves. We don't know if that's actually going to happen.
Yeah, right. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully people don't run away from New York City. I don't like any of those ideas. However, Trump had another reason to pay attention to this race, okay? The president will quickly tell you that he is no fan of my brother, or of mine, by the way, and that's okay. But I believe he and his people are looking at this race because they see what can beat them in the midterms. And the lineup...
So you think he's watching because he sees the same energy?
It is MAGA on the other side with more people and more intensity than we saw with MAGA.
But let me ask, what succeeded for Republicans? So if we go back to the Tea Party in 2010, and so if the idea here is a parallel construction between whether it's no kings or whatever, the moment for the Democratic Party now and the way the Tea Party was going into the 2010 election. What worked for Republicans in 2010 and 2014 was what? Not weird, not crazy, right? Remember Christine O'Donnell, I'm not a witch.
Yeah.
What didn't work for Republicans again and again and again during the populist counter-reaction movement and all of that stuff, what worked for them was being boring and normal, right? That's what actually, the party that can most convincingly depict normality is the party that can win with these persuadable votes.
I'm with you, but everyone's sitting at this table. And you can say, well, that's bubble. Yeah, but the power's in the bubble also. So that's not what Democrats believe. Democrats believe they have to be like what beat them. That's why Gavin Newsom, who, say what you want about him, this is a measured guy, this is a smart guy, this is a think, then speak, and if it goes the wrong way, find a way out of it, polished politician. He is acting the buffoon with these tweets with Trump and his little stunts. And he has never been more popular. And they want a gross muscularity of response. That's why the Prop 50, say what they say, do what they say. I don't care what Jay Jones said in his text. You should be angry. These are Nazis. These are fascists. That is captured in this movement. And there's something else that's very controversial. The idea that Mamdani's going to get jumped by the New York media after this, no. Because his brand of being a little too welcoming, of very divisive talk about Jews and Islamism, not being a Muslim, an Islamist, an extreme Islamist, very different, is very powerful on the left part of the Democratic Party.
It's very powerful on the left party, the Democratic Party, in places like New York City.
Right, and I think the media will leave them alone because of that. They'll be afraid of them coming after them.
Oh, of their own particular group inside New York City?
Oh, you're bought by AIPAC. Oh, you're bought by the Jews. They're sensitive to that right now. I think it's, picking on Jews as a minority in a way I've never seen in my life, but that's not what's popular to say in that party.
All right, let's bring in Jeff Scally, who's the chief election analyst with Decision Desk HQ. Jeff, tell me what you're seeing in terms of numbers. First, we've all been discussing the race that you just called in New York City. This has been a huge number of votes in this race for New York City mayor. Did we break the 2 million mark, and if so, by how much? And what does that mean in terms of with turnout of this kind?
Well, it is too early to know what the final count will be, but our projections have it going north of 2 million. And to put that into context, the largest raw turnout we'd seen in recent years, and when I say recent, I'm being generous with that term, is 1989 and 1993. There were about 1.8 million votes cast in the David Dinkins, Rudy Giuliani matchups of those two cycles. And since then, we have not seen turnout in a general election for New York mayor be remotely that close in terms of that raw vote number. So the fact that we are probably going to surpass 2 million votes, I think speaks to the energy and attention that this race has garnered, obviously the intensity of passion for and against the candidates. That all comes together to create a lot of democracy, if you will.
Yeah. And what about youth vote? We'd heard about some huge numbers in young voters in New York City. Is that what you're seeing?
Well, we don't have the perfect breakdown by age, but based on the early vote numbers, there was definitely it was running close to 50-50 in terms of sort of over 45, under 45 numbers, which, to understand in an off-year election, where you would expect voters who are just less active, less engaged to not show up, and those voters tend to be on the younger side on average. The fact that you were running that close in terms of the age ranges, I think, did speak to Mamdani's appeal, and the fact that he did generate a lot of turnout and emotion among a lot of young voters.
And just super quick before we say goodbye, in New Jersey, we are seeing Mikie Sherrill really perform well in the same parts of that state that had come out for Trump just last year.
Yeah, I think there are going to be a lot of big questions about who exactly turned out. Are you talking about sort of two different electorates? A presidential electorate where you have a lot of lower propensity voters who turned out for Trump, but then in this election did not show up. Or, in some cases, there are going to be voters who voted for Sherrill who may have voted for Trump because they're just dissatisfied with the status quo. And they look at Trump as president and turn to Sherrill as a result.
Yeah, that is the big question. Is it a function of somebody changing their mind about the direction of the country and who they want representing them versus a function of just sitting at home because it's not a presidential election? All right, Jeff Scally, great to talk to you. I know you got to get back to all the data crunching at Decision Desk HQ, calling all the races early tonight. Thank you so much. All right, we will be right back. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll have much more on election results as they come in. Don't go away. All right, DDHQ, very first to call the New York City mayor's race for Zohran Mamdani. We just did so a few moments ago. He is getting commentary, shall we say, from President Trump, who has not been shy about weighing in at all on this mayor's race. Kelly Myers live for us at the White House. Kelly, what did President Trump have to say about the results of this election we just announced a few moments ago?
Well, so far, Elizabeth, we haven't heard yet from President Donald Trump. He is here at the White House. A senior White House official has told me he is watching these returns, that he would definitely be watching these tonight. He's not over in the West Wing, so I imagine he's watching these returns coming in from the residents. But I was just talking with a source close to the White House, and they were telling me that nothing has changed from a year ago tonight. This is the response they just gave me over the phone, that blue states remain blue states, blue cities remain blue cities. The country is exactly where it was a year ago today. It's not as indicative of national politics as many may think it might be. As far as the Mamdani win, they said, I asked if that's a good thing or a bad thing for Republicans. The source said TBD, but they did say there is an energy there and that going forward, Democrats really will need to fill that leadership position and have a direction going forward. As far as texting with Democratic sources tonight, they say Republicans are running into a buzzsaw in the midterms if they don't begin distancing themselves from Trump immediately, Elizabeth. So we know that President Trump did pour some last-minute money from his war chest into New Jersey and Virginia, though he didn't endorse Winsome Earl Sears. Others from his campaign, previous campaign, 2024, said it was a bad candidate and a bad campaign there in Virginia. Elizabeth.
All right. Yeah, putting some distance there. He has not put any distance between himself, though, and this mayor's race. He was even tweeting over and over in the last 24 hours that anybody voting for Mamdani would be, quote, these are his words, stupid. But clearly many New Yorkers went ahead and did so anyway. Kelly Meyer reporting live from the White House. Connell McShane is with us at the wall with the very latest numbers that you're crunching. What are you finding?
A couple of things that stand out here, I think, already. We're about half the vote in, by the way, in New York. So much of it early.
They count fast.
Well, a lot of it's the early vote that they just dump at once. Is Mamdani going to get 50 was one of the questions going in. He's right below it at 49.7. I'm going to get to the other spreads in just a second. The other thing at the top of the screen where it says 49 is the estimated reporting right now. How many total votes will we have? It was back in 1969 when John Lindsay won re-election that I think they got up to about 2.4 million. But since then, they haven't been above 2 million total. Half the vote in, we're tracking to get well over 2 million votes, okay? So it's a high turnout election in New York. And then the last thing here, I said Mamdani's under 50. Slee was underperforming where he was in the polls, the Republican nominee, only 8%. So Andrew Cuomo now at 42 almost to just under 50. So it's just about an 8-point spread. You know, obviously the Republican votes usually, and this is a strange election because you have Cuomo running as an independent, are going to come from Staten Island. Real quick, New York's basically 5 counties called boroughs. 5 boroughs was Staten Island here is where you're going to get more Republicans. So there's where you're going to get at the bigger Cuomo numbers, right? 55 for Cuomo. Sliwa there at 22. All the rest of it, we're here in the island of Manhattan, is going to be Mamdani territory, although Cuomo there 52-44, that's Manhattan. Brooklyn is really where the Mamdani support has been the strongest, and here he's at 59 in the share in Brooklyn. So as you go back to the overall city, it is interesting to see Mamdani just a share under 50, and to me it stands out that Sliwa is the Republican nominee at only 8, making it a closer race.
Really something.
Well, that was what we saw last night, right? I mean, if you're going to attribute that to anything way underperforming, it's Donald Trump coming out last night and saying a vote for Sliwa is a vote for Mamdani. I won't quote it directly about your brother, but basically, hey, Republicans, hold your nose and vote for Andrew Cuomo because it's better than voting for Sliwa and throwing your vote.
I mean, that's why I don't really believe that the president had any intention to endorse my brother because he's not a particular fan of his. But I'm telling you, my opinion is that Mamdani, you could easily make the analysis that this is great for Trump. This makes the point of what
you don't have to. I'm already getting those text messages from a lot of sources.
What he means about the left, that this is what Bernie Sanders, AOC, the power brokers, this is what you want as a socialist who says things that make Jews so afraid in New York City that they may leave. That's what you want. This is great for me.
Well, the Jews aren't having a great run of it right now with American politics.
True.
It's not been a delight for our
the
Jewish
Jews have recognized something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime here in America, okay? I believed, growing up as what I understood myself to be when I grew up, which was an ethnic in New York City, as an Italian-American. My father wasn't considered a white guy. You remember how they used to talk about him as a swarthy ethnic and the mafia and all, right? So I thought that in my assimilation and graduation to whiteness, because I am as white as they come, except for this horrible thing. I thought the Jews
Is it always about you?
Had made the same trip with my people, that like they're just white now also. No. Jews are Jews. They are a targeted minority, and they are aware of it now in a way they've never been before, and they need protection and they need allies.
Well, and somebody who I think has rung the alarm bells about the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred on the left for a very long time, even before I was seen. It was Batya Ungar-Sargon, host of Batya, which airs weekends here on News Nation. Good to see you. So much to talk about. I thought something that Kelly Meyer reported, though, is important. She said that the White House is now spinning this as this is the same country as it was a year ago. The numbers from Virginia and New Jersey show it is a very different country than it was a year ago, especially when it comes to working class voters and working class counties. Do you agree?
It's very interesting because I think the Democrats are having a very good night, obviously. But in a way, their victories are going to compound the tension within the party going forward and a big decision they have to make. Because, of course, Mikie, Sherrill, and Abigail Spanberger are blue dog Dems. They rode in on this wave of sort of centrist Democrats with a background in the military, much more to the center, to that normie average American who tends to be a swing voter. They're both winning. And then you have Zohran Mamdani, far, far, far left, progressive energy, winning big in New York City. And so in a way, the Democrats, it's great. They're winning big, but it's also terrible because that decision they're going to have to make for 2026 and 2028 about which path to take is going to be even harder to make because both sides seem to be doing very well in different ways.
Okay. That may be the argument, right, that that's a decision that you would love to have. Good problem to have, right, is that you're able to be a big tent. You're able to win in New York in the way that they did moving to the left. You're able to win in New Jersey and in Virginia. But I go back to what I said, Batya, and I think we have to be fair about this, that Virginia counties are moving much farther to the left than they did to the right in 2024. You've got Jack Sherrill way underperforming Donald Trump in a number of New Jersey counties, especially Hispanic and working class counties. What does that say about the fact that working men and women are still hurting and they are still angry?
Yeah, I think, you know, these are very pragmatic voters who have very pressing needs. And I think inflation has not come down to the degree that the administration had hoped. They're betting big that that issue is going to resolve itself much more over the next 6 months and the next year, that the tariffs and the immigration raids are going to have that effect. But
you're
that
saying
it takes
they,
time.
Meaning Republicans, Donald Trump is betting.
The Republicans, the administration, yes.
Okay.
But I think it's very obvious that Donald Trump had a secret sauce, and it is not clear to me that the GOP understands what that was or what it was that made working class Americans feel so attached to the agenda he was presenting.
All right, Batya, stand by for us because there's a whole nother half of this story, and I think it's exactly what Chris Cuomo was talking about the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred, and what this really means for the first time electing somebody, certainly somebody in this prominent of a role in America for the first time since the 1960s, who is so hateful to so many and willing to, if not condone, accept calls for violence against them. That's what's happened in New York City. Back with more in a minute.
Where they went.
All right, welcome back to our special coverage of the elections happening today at 31 states across the country. We have got everything covered here. DDHQ has called several races. We called the mayor's race for Zohran Mamdani just a few moments ago, the governor's races for New Jersey and Virginia, Both have gone Democratic tonight by pretty healthy margins. Joining us here at the desk is Mike Nellis, Democratic strategist and former senior advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. Welcome. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
So we just heard the reaction from the White House and from Democratic sources, according to our Kelly Myers, who are saying it's a good night to be a Democrat tonight. Are you feeling pretty good?
Yeah, I think it's good. It's nice to win again, but I think the White House is a little bit delusional if they think this isn't reflective of how the nation has changed in the last year.
How has it changed?
Well, I think just look at the numbers, right? Kamala Harris won Virginia by about 6 points. Looks like Abigail Spanberger is going to win by about 12. In New Jersey, she won by about 5. It looks like Democrats are going to win by about 10, maybe 8. So you see the nation moving away from Donald Trump. You see people awfully frustrated.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you exactly what I asked Steyerwalt in the break as we're watching Zohran Mamdani's headquarters. We'll take his speech when he gets there. It would have been very easy 4 years ago, and boy, NewsNation's come a long way since 4 years ago when I was on a balcony by myself at 1 o'clock in the morning talking about the Virginia governor's race, when Glenn Youngkin won, to say, oh my God, it is going to be a blowout for Republicans in the midterms because of how incredibly unusual this mandate that Youngkin got in Virginia was, this victory. Why is it that Democrats don't have the same potential problems that Republicans did 4 years ago?
Well, I think Democrats are a lot better about candidate recruitment. Like, if you look at candidate recruitment 4 years ago, it was rough for the Republicans. They ran a lot of candidates that dramatically underperformed. I think you'd call that a Trump effect. Like, Donald Trump is not particularly good at selecting the candidates that are going to help Republicans win. They underperform. He overperforms because he's got a secret sauce that every Democrat in the party gets really frustrated by, would love to figure out how to replicate it for themselves. But I think if Democrats run good candidates, which they've been knocking it out of the park on candidate recruitment, like Roy Cooper in North Carolina, you'll find Democrats do just as well as they did tonight.
Do you think when you talk about that secret sauce that President Trump has, what are you predicting happens at the midterms in a year? Because Donald Trump will not be on the ballot, but his agenda, he needs control of Congress to get his agenda through. And can he get his supporters to come out to the polls to vote for Republican candidates if he's not on the ballot?
I'm not sure he can without him on the ballot. Like, he's never been able to do it before. Every midterm.
So his supporters love him and vote for him. They're not going to come out for anybody else, even when it's his own agenda that's at stake.
I don't think so. I think the other thing you have to remember is that people are pretty frustrated right now. He ran on getting grocery prices down on day one. We're 10 months in. Everything's more expensive. And he's living in fantasy land pretending like it isn't a problem.
So this is a coalitional problem that Democrats used to have. And we can even think about it as recently as the Obama era, where when you have working class voters that are on your side, those are the lower propensity voters. They don't come out in midterms. They definitely don't come out in off-year elections. But they do show up in quadrennial presidential years. Sure. So for Democrats, the comparative cycle of 2018, right? So big win in Virginia in 2017 and the anti-Trump backlash. Democrats have their best 2018 of all time. The question I have for you is, in the 4-year cycle, in the presidential cycle, how did Democrats get working class voters back? How do they get them back? Or is it just about running up the score with college-educated, suburban, more affluent voters?
No, I think we have to get working class voters back if we're going to win the next election, if we're going to win the next presidential election for sure. I think two things to keep in mind. One, the state of the economy is really rough right now. The job market is the worst it's been in the last 5 years. Everybody knows it's more expensive if you're balancing a household budget. That's going to move a lot of folks back into our column because there's nowhere else for them to go, right? Democrats still have to offer them a real solution. When you go to 4 years from now where you need to find a presidential candidate, it's going to be a complete and total reset in American politics. Donald Trump will not be on the ballot, despite what Steve Bannon says. He's not going to be on the ballot in a couple of years, and Democrats are going to have a new standard bearer. Republicans are going to have a new standard bearer. It's going to be a whole new ballgame.
You want to just talk about energy for a second. Abigail Spanberger already talked almost an hour ago where she won in Virginia, and that party's still going on. It tells you where the energy is in the Democratic Party. I want to bring Batya Ungar-Sargon in, who is still with us, host of Batya on News Nation. We can put up, Batya, the picture of Zohran Mamdani's. We lost Batya. So there you go. Who's walking out with? Is that Spanberger walking out again?
No.
Okay.
I think that's the lieutenant governor.
Lieutenant Governor. So, all right. Back to you, Nellis. We get this. This is again from Kelly Meyer reporting, and I'm hearing exactly the same thing over and over and over again from Republicans. From a GOP campaign operative to News Nation. Quote, Democrats have made a communist the face of their party in the nation's largest city, providing Republicans a political gift that keeps on giving. Donald Trump does very well when he has somebody to fight against. So do Republicans. You're telling me Zohran Mamdani isn't a problem for Democrats in a place like Georgia a year from now?
No, I don't think it's going to be a problem in Georgia a year from now, because I don't think there's a type of voter that exists that goes, I was going to vote for the Democratic Party, but New York City has a mayor I don't like. I don't think that type of voter exists, in the same way that I don't think there's a voter that's going to be mad because a Republican gets elected somewhere that's too extreme or conservative.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with the answer I think you're about to give, which is we're a big tent. I don't believe in a big tent. I've never believed in a big tent.
Well, you guys are both wrong. And here's why.
Well, hold on, I haven't even said it yet.
No, you're both wrong, though, about people don't say I'm not going to vote because somebody in that party is too extreme. New York is the exception. Bill de Blasio was a great thing for Republicans because New York was going downhill, crime was going up, it was reported on, people could see it, people could see the flight to Florida during COVID and the restrictions, and people voted against that across the country.
There can be a metaphor fact, but I'm not disagreeing with that idea. I'm just saying his point is that when you're having specific races, they want to bring up the mayor of New York City, and you're like talking about North Carolina. It doesn't have as much purchase. But the party's going to be one thing in the midterms. It's going to have one personality. And I don't have to tell you, the desire for muscularity, the desire for fighting back. Are you Spanberger or are you Mamdani?
I think it depends on where I'm running. I don't think you have to choose either or. I think candidate quality is going to matter here, and I think that the similarities between the two is they were laser focused on affordability. So I'm going to run strong candidates in as many elections as I can. They're going to focus on cost of living. They're going to focus on how they're going to help people. That's what Zohran did. That's what Spanberger did. That's what Mikie Sherrill did, and all three won tonight.
You don't see a bifurcated, almost schizophrenic schism, I mean, in those two wings of the party and the way they speak to people, the issues I mean, yes, they're both talking about affordability, but that's where literally that's where the similarity ends.
Well, but I think that's what coalition politics looks like, right? Like Susan Collins has to run a different game in Maine versus what Donald Trump does nationally. So I think you got to leave room for that to happen. Jared Golden is another example. He vastly outperforms Democrats in his district. I think it's an R+8 district, right? So I think you'll just ignore that.
All right. Well, we'll see. It's going to be very, very interesting, shall we say. And the point that you're making, or that you were making about Bill de Blasio, it wasn't, people weren't reacting to Bill de Blasio, the person Bill de Blasio. They were reacting to the issues that were created as a result of, well,
yeah, look, but also de Blasio was a zero who was easy to dislike and easy to lampoon. And he had no movement behind him.
Hey, can I add, though? Maybe you didn't hear when she said we have to take a break.
We'll take a break.
Okay, we're going to take a break.
You guys kept going.
We'll keep figuring this out in the break. We'll see you guys in a minute.
Probably not that popular on the left. Elizabeth and I were just saying Spanberger and Mikie Sherrill.
The brand new governors elect of
but
Virginia,
military, both members of Congress. And I was saying, you know, I like that pedigree. Congress maybe not so much because it's not so popular with us right now, so they're choosing not to do their job. But military people, I think, are a precious commodity in our society, and I think it's still a plus. But that might get you in trouble on the far left of the Democratic flank because they're becoming more and more anti-institutional.
Let me ask you this.
Not anti-military,
We thought,
I hope not.
We thought a year ago when we sat here that the election in 2024 was all going to be about abortion, right? That was sort of the idea that it was going to galvanize women and say, okay.
And it didn't.
And it didn't, and Donald Trump became president. It happened early in the night. We now know, thanks to Decision Desk HQ, governor of Virginia is now a Democrat. The governor of New Jersey, elected, is now a Democrat. And more importantly, the margin of Mikie Sherrill and Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey is a resounding mandate.
She's spanking him like a naughty child. You can use that whenever
it's not late enough.
It's not late
enough for that.
That's after 10.
But and as you said, Jack Ciattarelli is doing terrible style. What is going to be the takeaway from tonight? What's the lesson?
Well, it depends on whether you're besotted by brain-dead partisanship. If you are, and you're a hardcore Republican, then the lesson is going to be that the Democratic Party is now in the thrall of Zohran Mamdani, and they're going off a cliff, and that actually this series of stinging defeats is actually good news, is what you'll conclude if you're a hardcore MAGA Republican. If you are a Democrat, you will say, everything is better now. We're fixed. We are whole again. But allow me to suggest two winners, important winners tonight. We have we see Zohran Mamdani is about to come out. That he is not the creation of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but he is a representation. He is an extension of a movement that she was an early avatar of. Later, and people should stick around and continue to watch News Nation, of course, Gavin Newsom's going to have a great evening, right? He's expected to have a great evening because Prop 50 is going to win in California. I tell you, two visions for the Democratic Party, one in California and Gavin Newsom, one in New York with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I think it is the beginning of a 2028 derby between those two. There will be many claimants for the Democratic throne.
Do you really think it's going to come down to those two?
I think they represent the beginning of the difficult, very difficult fight that is going to take place within the Democratic Party about which way they're going to go.
I also think that, you know, what Leland's talking about, for me, it was never abortion or even the idea of pro-life. I always felt that that was a very cheap way to not deal with reproductive rights. I think a lot of women are still motivated by what happened with Dobbs and how casual people were about a surrendering of the right to their own body.
Yeah, but they were more motivated. The fundamental right that all of us missed was people felt the fundamental right about their kids, about do my kids get gender identity training in third grade? Do I have a fundamental right to buy groceries that I can afford? Do I have a fundamental right for my kids, if they're accused of something, to have due process? There were all there were all these other rights that ended up being more important in 2024. It's interesting that Abigail Spanberger won in Virginia 4 years after Youngkin, without having to say any of the school parent rights stuff that Youngkin did.
Yeah, it shifted.
She couldn't say, I don't want boys and girls sports.
It shifted. But here's one thing we know for sure tonight as we wrap up this first part of our coverage here at News Nation. Thank you for being with us. We are first because DDHQ is the best. And we call races early and we call them accurately. Thank you for being with us to do it, and thank you for being with me, my friends.
Lots of fun.
There we go. DDHQ, cheers to the nerds there. They continued their work. Big races. Prop 50 in California. The margins on that is going to be huge. Nobody better than Conor McShane, Nicole Burley. Chris Steyerwalt sticks around for a late evening. We'll get you a cup of coffee.
All right, it is 10 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States. 1 hour we have the close in California and in Washington State. California, the last big race really that we're waiting for as we continue with our coverage. It's great to be with you. Special News Nation coverage of the night. I am Conor McShane, moving into the big chair now from the wall. I'll go back to the wall.
They finally let you sit down.
Look who it is, in from Chicago.
I'm Nicole Burley, in from Chicago, here with News Nation political editor Chris Steyerwalt. Good to see you in person, which I love. We will bring you more on all the races in a moment. We do want to bring you up to speed on the big races. Decision Desk HQ has already called. So we start right here in New York City. Decision Desk HQ projects Zohran Mamdani will be the next mayor of the nation's largest city. He's expected to speak in about 15 minutes. In New Jersey, Decision Desk HQ projecting Mikie Sherrill will win the governor's mansion. And in Virginia, Decision Desk HQ projecting Abigail Spanberger will win the gubernatorial race. Here is her message to voters tonight.
And to those Virginians who did not vote for me, I want you to know that my goal and my intent is to serve all Virginians.
And staying in Virginia, DDHQ also projecting the Democrat Ghazala Hashmi is winning the lieutenant governor's race. We were looking at these races, how they track one to the other, governor's race, lieutenant governor's race, and of course the race for attorney general was closely watched in the state of Virginia. The projected winner there, Jay Jones winning in Virginia. You know, that's one of the big stories. We're going to head over to the wall right now and give you a look at some of these numbers in the races statewide. Certainly we'll get to Virginia. We have New Jersey up right now. We called New Jersey. We were first to the call on all of these races for Mikie Sherrill. So Mikie Sherrill, the Democrat, keeps New Jersey blue. Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican, running for the third time, unable to do it. And in fact, if you look back historically at how this state had gone Sherrill's been running ahead in many key counties of Kamala Harris in the last presidential race, and Sherrill has been running behind himself. 48% statewide, 43 is where he's tracking. We'll have time as we continue throughout our coverage to go into some of the details, but, you know, in and around Newark, New Jersey has been one of the key places that we've been watching in Essex County. We had a conversation earlier in the night about some of these, as they refer to them, majority-minority counties. So if you look at the census data, for example, in Essex County, 40% of the vote is black voters there. Hispanic voters make up 26%. Both are higher than the state average. And in those particular counties like that, we saw this all over the state. The performance from Sherrill was better than Harris, 77 versus 72, and the performance from Sherrill in many cases was worse than Sherrill when he ran 4 years ago. So that's really what happened in the state of New Jersey. I'll give you a quick look at Virginia. I think what Virginia, and, you know, Chris can weigh in on this as we look at this in some more detail later on, Abigail Spanberger winning over Winsome Earl Sears, is, you know, remember when we covered the presidential race last time, we talked about all those counties that were becoming either less blue or more red. In Virginia, county after county turning more blue. In fact, at last check, there were only 4 counties in the entire state of Virginia that hadn't moved in some way to the blue side, become, you know, less red or more blue. You look at Loudoun County as an example of what's been going on statewide in Virginia. Again, in a historical comparison, there's Loudoun up next to Arlington on the map. Kamala Harris, it was at 57. Spanberger's running ahead of her at 64%, and Winsome Earl Sears underperforming the numbers that Donald Trump put up there. So New Jersey and Virginia, those were the big governor's races that were on the board tonight. And then the other race that, of course, is getting a lot of attention around the entire country was the race for mayor here in New York City. And Zohran Mamdani, the 34-year-old self-identified Democratic socialist, will be the next mayor in this city, the largest city of the country. Right now, with 84% of the vote in New York, Mamdani is tracking above the key mark of 50%. There were some questions going in about whether he would get to 50. We'll see. 50.5 is where he is. One of the surprises is that Curtis Sliwa, who's the Republican nominee, underperforming some of the numbers we had in the polls. Nobody expected Sliwa to win, but the race between Sliwa and Cuomo was thought, by some analysts at least, maybe to be close as to who would come in second. It's not close. Cuomo's way ahead at 42. In fact, he's closer to Mamdani than many of the polls had. Borough by borough, no surprises. Everything blue except for Staten Island, and that's with Cuomo running as an independent. The shade that you see there is the Cuomo color. So when you speak about New York, future of the Democratic Party comes up a lot. What type of Democrat is most attractive now to voters? I want to bring in Congressman Mike Lawler, who's a Republican from New York and has had that conversation many, many times. What's the message, Congressman, being sent by voters in New York tonight, do you think?
Well, I think the Democratic Party has embraced the socialist movement. The fact that Zohran Mamdani is at about 50% speaks volumes to where the Democratic Party is moving. It's part of the reason why Hakeem Jeffries, you know, and Kathy Hochul went on bended knee and endorsed Mamdani. And, you know, I think this speaks to where this party is headed long term. Moreover, Zohran Mamdani will become the face of the Democratic Party heading into the midterms, along with Bernie Sanders and AOC.
So that's certainly what I'm sure Republicans like you are going to try to do. You're the more moderate side of the Republican Party. I think what Democrats will push back on is the other numbers that I ran through. They'll say their candidates that won in statewide races in both New Jersey and Virginia are far more moderate. And that might be the face of the party.
These are two Democrats that supported Joe Biden's open border policies. In Mikie Sherrill, she voted against the Laken-Riley Act. She voted against the largest tax cut in American history. They can pretend to be moderate, but the fact is they voted with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi almost 100% of the time when serving in Congress. Ultimately, though, I think what it speaks to in Virginia, you had a historically bad candidate on the Republican side. The current governor, Glenn Youngkin, is still polling extremely well and favorable and favorably viewed by voters in Virginia. So, you know, I think what you saw here was a case of a very bad candidate and campaign. In New Jersey, you know, Jack Ciattarelli we'll see how the numbers, the final numbers come in here. I think he'll end up, on par with roughly where President Trump was in 2024. Ultimately, these are Democratic-leaning states. New York City is a 7-to-1 Democratic city.
Right.
And, what you have here is roughly half the city is saying we don't like socialism, and about the other half is saying we embrace it. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens moving forward. But I think with Zohran Mamdani in there, you're going to see more primary challenges from the left in these contested congressional seats and state legislative seats across the country.
One of the things, though, in New Jersey that I think stood out was, and I pointed out one or two examples there, these majority-minority counties where you have a large share of black voters and Hispanic voters especially. Mike Sherrill did very well. President Trump actually did much better in those places, many of them, Passaic County, Essex County, in 2024 than he did in 2020. And I'm wondering if you think the way he's carried out his immigration crackdown is one of the reasons that the Republicans are underperforming in those places tonight.
Well, I think when you look at the numbers, people overwhelmingly across the country, including in Latino communities, support securing the border. They support the deportation of criminal aliens. What they don't support is, an overarching roundup of those who are here undocumented. It's part of the reason why I've been a co-lead on the Dignity Act. I think people want to ensure not a pathway to citizenship, not a pathway to asylum, but in fact a pathway to legalization so that people can go through the process and pay taxes, pay fines, get a job, not commit a crime,
But you think there's some backlash to the how, to the way things are being carried out? Some backlash in the vote tonight?
Potentially in certain communities, for sure. That obviously is a focal point that Democrats have tried to make, especially in more urban areas. But ultimately, I think the question is finding the balance on this and making sure that we address the border, which effectively has been done by President Trump. You have net zero illegal immigration in the country at this point. Deportation of criminal aliens, that is happening. But at the same token, a pathway forward so that those who are here participating in our economy 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whose children and grandchildren are American citizens, I do think that's where most Americans fall, is that they want to see a pathway for those folks.
All right. Congressman Mike Lawler, Republican, represents a district just north of New York City. Thanks for joining us on Election Night. We appreciate it. All right. Speaking of New York, Nicole, Zohran Mamdani, just over 1 million votes in the city.
Just crossing 1 million
How
votes.
about that?
And I do wonder, I wonder when we talk to some of the Democratic strategists, is this really a signal that some type of change is needed in how governing is done? I guess 1 million votes. So we will see. All right, we want to check in on some of our correspondents covering some of the night's other big races. DDHQ, first to call all of these races, including where Joe Khalil is located. He's covering the Virginia gubernatorial race live at the Abigail Spanberger watch party. And Joe, certainly victory there tonight for Spanberger.
Yeah, and the fact that you can hear the music behind us means the party here is still going on. A lot of jubilation. There really are no two ways around it. This was a very good night here for Democrats, all of whom in the statewide races, Abigail Spanberger, Ghazala, Hashmi, the lieutenant governor candidate, and Jay Jones, the attorney general candidate, all seemingly outperforming their poll numbers here. So they swept in a way that I think even the people here behind us maybe did not expect. And obviously the biggest headline of the race was the governor's race, Abigail Spanberger winning against Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. I can tell you that I went outside and just talked to a lot of folks here after it became clear that her victory was certain. And the feeling among a lot of these Democrats was very happy, obviously, but it was also relief. And there were some that said, we needed this. We needed a night like this. The memory of 2024 is still fresh in a lot of these folks' minds. there were a lot of, obviously, federal workers in Virginia and in the suburbs around D.C. that have lost jobs, that have felt like they have been sort of targeted. And a lot of them were here tonight, and they said the same thing, that if they couldn't win in these sorts of conditions, that they were really going to lose hope. So the fact that their candidate sort of outperformed expectation, reinvigorated that hope for them, I thought it was notable. Before we were here tonight, Nicole, I just want to add, we were at a polling place talking to voters as they were coming in. And, you know, among the media and among all of us that cover politics on a day-to-day basis, we were kind of gauging whether this would be a referendum on President Trump and his second term. And certainly a lot of voters told us that they felt like that was the case, why in large part they were voting, despite Abigail Spanberger trying to make this race more Virginia-centric.
All right, Joe Khalil live for us there at Spanberger's Victory headquarters. Let's head over now to Jessica Cartelia, who is live for us at Jack Ciattarelli's campaign headquarters in Bridgewater, New Jersey. Not a victory there for Ciattarelli, Jessica.
No, and I can tell you that in the past couple of minutes, it has really cleared out in here behind me. You know, they usually, Nicole, will post the numbers as they're coming in. Those numbers have not been posted at all tonight. Everybody kind of had this feeling coming in that things weren't going so well. They were, however, going very well for Mikie Sherrill. She spoke just minutes ago. Also, Ciattarelli gave his concession speech just a few minutes before that. He came to the stage and he said he phoned her, he wished her the best. The crowd booed, and he said, no, really, I wish her the best for everything that she does for New Jersey and hopefully solving the issues that are most relevant to New Jerseyans. She also acknowledged that she congratulated him for a well-fought fight and said, you know, she wishes him the best as well. There were 3 times that Ciattarelli had run for this spot, and third time, unfortunately, was not a charm for him. A gubernatorial race expected to top over $200 million here in the state of New Jersey. Democrats really throwing a lot of money to get her elected, and it worked, right? Sherrill became the second woman governor that New Jersey has ever had. That's big news for this state as a whole, and of course Democrats across the board. Sherrill ran on her background as a military pilot. She also promised to increase affordable housing, freeze energy rates, and really modernize school funding. She also said that she would not increase the sales tax here in New Jersey, and these were all major issues for New Jerseyans. But again, Nicole, as we stand here tonight and you kind of look behind me, it was packed just a few moments ago. He gave his concession speech. It was very upbeat. Everyone applauded him, yelled, Jack, 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 and then now it's dispersing.
And now it is dispersing. All right, Jessica Cartelia live for us there in New Jersey. Jessica, thank you. So, Chris, you know, we'll bring you in here. Big wins pretty much across the board for Democrats. Not necessarily a surprise, but how much do you think everything that is happening right now in our country contributed to that?
Well, the polls told us that we were going to have a close race in New Jersey.
Right.
Polls indicated, and good polling, the kind of polling that I like, the primo polling, coming in at like a 7-point edge for Sherrill. The spread right now is a lot more than that.
Right.
And there were a bunch of less good polls that were coming in. It's 1 point, it's 3 points, it's a very close race. And then you'd say, well, geez, if Jack Ciattarelli outperforms the polls by just the same margin that he did 4 years ago, this thing is tied. It's going to be quite a race. Those numbers are going the opposite direction of that. Same story in Virginia, a little different in the sense that the polls always forecast a wide win for Abigail Spanberger, but not necessarily a 14-point kind of wide win. And here is what I will tell you. The question for Republicans is, can they get their lower propensity voters to the polls when Donald Trump is not on the ballot? And can they get them to the polls when it's not fun? Because winning and maintaining a majority is dependent on getting your voters to go out.
Haven't done it in the Trump era, period.
They have not done it in the Trump era. And I fully expect that, you know, if Donald Trump were on the ballot again today, and he were running again, that he would outperform his polls again because these voters who don't typically participate that come in would be there and they would nudge those numbers up. But we see exactly the opposite happening here in lower turnout elections, is that those lower propensity working class voters aren't there for Republicans.
So there's a couple of things, and we can pop up. I think I got Jersey on the screen, and we can pop it up behind us on the wall. So the question is, is it Trump, right? Is it, and Mikie Sherrill wins or is winning 56-43? But if we looked at some of those counties, Chris, like you were telling me, look at like Essex County, for example, and we'll just bring it up again. Is it that Republicans can't perform with Trump on the ballot now, or is it in these places, and I'll just take a look at the census data in Essex County, where you have a lot of minority voters, that there is some backlash, like I was talking to Mike Lawler about, with the way the president's carrying out his policies and the backlash is against him in year one, immigration in particular?
So Democrats made a fundamental mistake over the course of 10 or 15 years in treating Hispanic voters as monolithic and assuming that immigration was a driving factor for Democrats. For Hispanic voters again and again and again, which misunderstood the nature of the electorate. I have watched Republicans make a similar mistake in reverse, which is that Hispanic voters don't care about that issue because they only care about this other thing, and that the salience of that issue is broken. I will promise you that when you start doing mass deportations and we're checking papers and they're asking courts for the power to basically stop and frisk kind of approach to people based on the language they speak or their complexion or anything like that, that will cause Hispanic voters to bunch up and not in Republicans' favor.
Do we have that reaction from Trump? I guess he hadn't, earlier he hadn't said anything, but I think he said something. There it is. little Ricky Henderson, the late Ricky Henderson always spoke in the third person. Trump wasn't on the ballot. Shutdown were the two reasons Republicans lost the election.
According to pollsters, attributed according to pollsters.
So who do you think, the name of those pollsters would be?
Well, I'm sure, look, there's truth in what he says. And and we just acknowledge the part about him not being on the ballot. But the shutdown, I don't think hurts I don't think it hurts Republicans nearly as much as Democrats imagine it does.
Interesting. All right. Well, we will see. Up next, we'll check in with the White House. Looking ahead to our last big call on the night, California. We are also waiting to hear from New York City mayoral-elect Zohran Mamdani.
All right, as we're back waiting for Zohran Mamdani to speak, by the way, out in Brooklyn, Chris Stirewalt had a number of races. We'll kind of call them the other races that we were watching tonight besides the big ones. Statewide in Pennsylvania, first time since Trump won there last year, is kind of interesting.
Yeah, we let Pennsylvania decide all of our elections in America. It's very convenient. We just let Pennsylvania do all the heavy lifting for us. And, we talked earlier tonight about the significance of what's happening tonight in terms of 2028.
Yeah.
We're waiting on Prop 50 in California to come in, where Gavin Newsom's expecting to ring the bell. We're going to see, I bet we're going to see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with Zohran Mamdani, if not in person, certainly in spirit. But in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro made an interesting choice. So the way they do it in Pennsylvania, they have retention elections for judges. Judges get appointed, and then after they serve their term, voters can recall them basically and force the governor to appoint new ones. And Shapiro made an interesting and potentially risky call, which was he's going to go out and campaign for these judges, retain these judges, keep the judges. So it was an open question, how would they do? They did great.
Yeah, there's three of them.
Yeah.
So basically, you're not running against someone. We have it if we could pop it up, I hope. Like Christine Donahue, Kevin Doherty, and David Weck. So like for Christine Donahue in this case, we'll pop it up here. 61% of the people said, yeah, keep her. All right. And that was the vote. She's not running against somebody.
And this is technically nonpartisan, but what is nonpartisan in America in the year of our Lord 2025? These are
maybe your commentary.
Right. These are Democratic. These are perceived as Democratic judges.
Right.
and they all decisively won the margins here. And Shapiro, I don't know whether we can do county breakdowns on this or not, but when you look at how they won and where they won, this is a real good shot in the arm for Shapiro in Pennsylvania, who is very popular in Pennsylvania, and a guy who you would have to say is kind of a long shot for the Democratic nod in 28, but this is a good show of strength for him.
These margins, like this guy that we have up here right now, is at 60-40, right? So that's one. Then David Wecht is the next one. Again, 60-40. And the third we showed you earlier is Christine Donahue, 60-40. So again, my understanding is going back to years and years. It's only happened like once in 50 years that somebody has not won retention. So just for some perspective there, but still kind of a big deal.
The margins are solid. And again, it was a risky bet to go out and say, we're going to do all three and I'm going to back them all and we're going to go do this. So this was a flex by Shapiro for sure.
Well, my question for you, Sherrill. So for everybody who's at home watching this and doesn't live in Pennsylvania, doesn't know or necessarily care about their judges, why does this matter? Say why this matters to them.
Pennsylvania is the largest swing state. It has the most electoral votes of the swing states that are likely to be in play in 2028. And it has two counties. So Erie County is a favorite, but you can also look at Lucerne County. There's a handful of counties in Pennsylvania that we can look at and say are bellwethers for the whole country that look a lot like the country's. Oh, it's the same argument about why New Jersey and Virginia, why we spend so much time thinking and talking about New Jersey and Virginia. I love polls. I love public opinion research. I think it's great. But polls are not elections. And elections are the real thing. And this is a chance to see how policies and conditions and markets and all of the million things that go into voter decisions play out in places that are, I guess here's the way I say it. Politicians are fine. I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, that's fine. But voters are really interesting, and demography is really interesting. Who are these people? Where are these people? What are they thinking about? And what we saw a year ago was that Democrats couldn't find a way to connect with these voters in these places.
And you get every kind of voter in Pennsylvania.
And you get every kind of voter in rich and poor and working class and black and white and
urban, the
whole shebang. And I would just say Pennsylvania is the place to watch. And if Democrats can find a way to be like Josh Shapiro, they are a party that will be very competitive in 2028 or certainly in 2026. If they're a party that's like Zohran Mamdani and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that's a lot. You know, in Pennsylvania, it's the T in the middle of Pennsylvania. You got Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Then you got the T, so it's Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Alabama in the middle.
Yeah, the Carville line, wasn't it?
That's right. And if in the all-important, most important swing state of Pennsylvania, who's going to do better? Josh Shapiro, somebody like that, or somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Yeah, the Democratic Party certainly has been flailing, so it will be interesting to see.
But they're feeling good tonight. Now they feel good.
Tonight, you're right, absolutely.
That's right. They needed a little love.
They needed a win. They got some tonight. Yeah. Speaking of which, the races this year will be used by both parties as they begin their push to the 2026 midterms coming up next year, including the White House, which is looking to capitalize, of course, on big moves that Trump has made nearly 1 year since he was elected. That includes on immigration and the war in the Middle East. We do have NewsNation's Kelly Meyer. She is live for us at the White House. Allie Bradley is live in Chicago covering the immigration crackdown happening there. And our Robert Sherman, of course, live for us in Tel Aviv. Kelly, we start with you and the president already spinning the results tonight. We saw that post on Truth Social.
Yeah, Nicole, and I got to say to Chris really quick, I'm from Luzerne County, so I'll say we are kind of a big deal, but who else thinks they're a big deal tonight is President Trump with his latest Truth Social post referring to himself. Trump wasn't on the ballot and shut down were the two reasons that Republicans lost elections today. He says that's according to the pollsters. So President Trump saying, kind of seeming to blame the shutdown or suggesting that the shutdown is hurting Republicans here, which is new. But I was also talking with sources tonight, one close to the White House, saying to me that nothing has changed from a year ago tonight to now, basically saying that New Jersey went for Harris, Virginia went for Harris, New York went for Harris. They said, I don't see how it could be a referendum. The only way it could be a referendum is if Republicans won. But then on the other side, we heard from a veteran GOP activist telling News Nation this is a suburban tsunami against the Republicans. And on Mamdani, a source close to the White House told me TBD if that's good for Republicans. But we have been hearing from the RNC basically saying, and a GOP campaign operative telling me that this is a political gift to the Republicans that they are giving and that it keeps on giving tonight. So I will say that we are set to hear from the president in person early tomorrow morning. I was told by a senior White House official that there is a breakfast for all Republican senators here tomorrow morning. They will invite the cameras in, at least for now. So we are expecting to hear from the president, and he may have more to say on this election night.
Yes,
Nicole?
if I had to predict, I would say that he will certainly have more to say tomorrow morning. All right, Kelly, thank you. Let's get over to Allie Bradley, who is live in Chicago. And Allie, immigration certainly has been a major focus of the president's first year in his second term. That doesn't seem like that's changing anytime soon.
Yeah, Nicole, they're doubling down here. The president saying they're going to go even harder when it comes to this immigration enforcement we've seen across the nation. And really interesting because when you look at our DDHQ polling, it shows that 52% of people that voted disagree with the way that the Trump administration is handling immigration policy. But what's interesting here is 58% agree that people who cross the border illegally or overstayed their visas need to be removed by ICE. So those are interesting statistics to learn. And then when you look at if they believe that the country is actually safer under the president's immigration crackdown right now, we're looking at 48% of people believe that it has made the country safer. Only 19% say that they don't believe that it has made much of a difference. Some of those efforts, though, include the removal of more than 3,000 people under Operation Midway Blitz. We know they've arrested at least that many people, but we just got new statistics from our ICE sources showing that more than 17,500 illegal immigrants have been arrested in the Chicago area by ICE since the beginning of this year. So they're certainly making these apprehensions, making these arrests, and again, doing what the American people essentially voted for in the first place. So they just don't seem to really like, Nicole, how a lot of these immigration enforcement tactics are being used and how it's really being publicized. And what we're seeing on the public stage, right, is some of those kind of inflammatory moments that they maybe don't like. But again, 58% of the people that are polled say they do believe that those individuals need to be removed, Nicole.
All right, Allie Bradley live for us there in Chicago. All right, we head over now to Robert Sherman, who is live in Tel Aviv. Robert, really the eyes of the world have been on President Trump's involvement there in the Middle East.
Oh, without question. I mean, as you look at how much of this presidency has revolved around foreign policy, all the different wars, all the different peace deals that have been brokered here, tonight the ceasefire is still holding here in Gaza. This has been viewed as one of the, if not the biggest achievements of the Trump administration when it's come to overseas. I would also note as well is that there was a significant development tonight in which the remains of the last American hostage, Itai Hen, came home here this evening. So no more Americans alive or dead inside of Gaza. That is a stark contrast from where we were 2 years ago. That said, people here around the world, particularly in the Middle East, have been watching some of these races, particularly the New York mayoral race. And I would say that over the last few weeks, people have been asking us about this rather extensively, how much support Mamdani has in New York. Is this a sentiment that is around the country? Because there is a deeply held concern in Israel that goes all the way to the prime minister's office that support for Israel coming from the United States is starting to erode. And when they look at a candidate such as Mamdani, they wonder, is this the canary in the coal mine that will there be more candidates like this to come? That's what people are talking about here and how it plays into the whole foreign policy conversation that we've seen throughout this presidency. Nicole?
Absolutely, and we know there are so many people in Israel with direct connections to New York City. So, all right, Robert Sherman live for us there in Tel Aviv, Kelly Meyer live at the White House, and Allie Bradley live in Chicago. Well, a record-breaking 2 million New Yorkers have spoken out with the establishment. Coming up, we'll have more on what Zohran Mamdani's pivotal win means for the Democratic Party in the midterms.
All right, there's one more big one left, guys, really. It's California, top of the hour, 20 minutes away. Prop 50, they call it, the redistricting, where voters decide whether or not to redraw the maps to match what they did in Texas. Democrats are trying to pick up 5 congressional seats at the end of the day. This nationwide gerrymandering fight continues. Americans on both sides of the aisle will tell you they hate this. They hate this kind of thing. The mid-cycle redistricting polling done by NewsNation and DDHQ actually shows that 55% are opposed. You look at the current and proposed map in California, and 28% disapprove. You know, if you look at the polling on it, what's kind of interesting, go back to the big wall on this, is if you break it down by party, forget California, everywhere, pretty much everyone's opposed. Disapproval is high, Democrat, Republican, and Independent. But the Republicans, and this might be telling in some ways, are the only ones that have a little bit more approval at 43% compared to Democrats and Independents. Let's talk to Esther Kim Barrett about this. Has a stake in all of this. Congressional candidate in California 40. Good to see you again. Thank you for coming on. If I remember correctly,
thank you for having me again.
You're running as a Democrat in one of the few districts that's going to be less blue. Am I right about that? Is that isn't that your fate?
And so what's happening is that this district and a neighboring district are going to be combined into one.
Right.
And so we're going to effectively eliminate one Republican congressperson this way.
Okay, so that's the way, net. Because there are, I actually have a list here, I think, we can pop it up if we get a chance, of the Republicans who are supposed to be affected, and there are 5 Republican seats that would be lost, and these members of Congress, you know, we have Kevin Kiley on a lot, Darrell Issa is very, very well known, they would, you know, be on the way out. What do you say? We saw what the people say. What do you say about all this and whether it makes the country better or worse?
Oh, I definitely think it makes the country better. I mean, I've been saying this from day one, that you can't take the actions that Texas is taking and the actions that we're taking in response as the same. The motivations are completely different. And one is really about suppressing the Democratic voice, and the other is about fighting for it. So it's pretty simple for me.
Well, Esther Kim, Nicole Burley here. So, you know, we just saw the numbers there on the board. You know, Democrats do not support it as much as Republicans. So, I mean, it certainly does look like Prop 50 is going to overwhelmingly pass there in your state. But my question for you, I mean, is this a winning issue for Democrats? It may be a winning issue short term, but is it a winning issue long term?
I mean, we have to remember that it goes back into a different form of, you know, California has an expiration date on this. This is just a temporary measure. And so I really don't think it will be an issue at all going forward. I think actually people are going to forget about it pretty soon.
Very interesting.
At some point, though, we're going to be in our own. Chris, you and I have talked about this. I don't know if you want to jump in on this at all. Kind of going more and more in our own corners I mean, in my view, at least to the detriment of the country, because now the idea of having centrist members of Congress seems to be less likely, or are we making too much?
Well, the reason, and by the way, the reason Republican numbers are higher on that is that when this poll was taken, they thought they were going to be the beneficiaries of it, but now as more states are doing it, it's turning into more of a goat rodeo.
Yeah.
But I wonder whether our friend in California,
yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Chris Stirewalt. The language that a lot of Democrats have used around this has been increasingly hot, and I've heard the word rigged. I have heard Hakeem Jeffries and other people talk about Donald Trump rigging the election. Now, in 2020, when Republicans used language like that to talk about the results of the election, Democrats very rightly and understandably said that that was bad because it undermined people's confidence in the election. What do you say to Democrats who are using that word and words like that to try to delegitimize the results of the 2026 election because of this mid-decade redistricting?
I think it's resonating right now with individuals because we are convinced, and not just Democrats, but I really do think centrist Republicans are really convinced that there has been so much cheating going on from the top, where now we are looking at an electorate, even if they voted for Trump in the last cycle, I mean, there's real opportunity here for pickups for centrist Democrats, even in red districts, because a lot of people are feeling like they have been cheated on by this administration. And that is resonating, and I think it's very smart language for the Democrats to use. Well, also because, I mean, think about it. We all know that Trump isn't the most honest individual out there. He's cheated on his wives, he's cheated on his taxes and his businesses, he's tried to cheat on elections. I mean,
it's a little different. I think Chris is right. It's a little different when you talk about elections because, again, it's the same argument. Just real quick, Esther, on this. It's the same argument in 2020, and I want it's a lot of people remember that. A lot of people remember January 6th, and a lot of Democrats made those arguments and. I don't know. It's a different feeling when you talk about cheating and when you're speaking about elections, to me at least. Real quick.
Sure. But we have to remember that Trump did this in response after he lost and claimed that he was cheating. Right now, we know that he is changing the rules of the game itself. And that feels fundamentally undemocratic. That feels like he is cheating people out of a lot of votes and a lot of voices preemptively.
All right.
And it just doesn't feel right for most people.
We'll talk more about this. Esther Canvera, thank you. California running for Congress as a Democrat as we continue. But let's get going. The polls closing out there soon. We have Mamdani coming up here in New York. He's expected to speak and address supporters in Brooklyn after what was a victory for the 34-year-old in the mayor's race here in New York City. Andrew Cuomo is speaking now in New York. He's in Mamdani, the victor, still to come from his headquarters in Brooklyn. We'll be back. More coverage on News Nation. We saw him right before the break. There he is, Andrew Cuomo, speaking in New York, conceding the race to Zohran Mamdani, addressing his supporters. The former governor makes the run for mayor, comes up short as an independent after losing in the primary. Now, any moment, the winner, Mamdani, the 34-year-old Zohran Mamdani, will be speaking. We'll take that from Brooklyn. There's the Mamdani headquarters. So as we continue here from New York, let's welcome in our friend Paul Rieckhoff, as the host of the Independent Americans podcast. Good to see you.
You too, guys.
As always. What stands out tonight in the city that you love so much here, New York?
I think, like so much of America, even this city is pretty deeply divided. I mean, there's going to be a lot of talk about the historic nature of Mamdani, and I think that's important. But the reality is he only got about 51%. And this is a city where Democrats usually get 68%, you get 65%, right? So he's going to have to govern a deeply divided city, half of which is pissed off that he got elected and half of which is thrilled. That's going to be the story for so many places. I think more broadly, it's a story of the identity crisis that is the Democratic Party, right? You've got Mamdani here in New York, but if you want to win statewide, you want to win national, it's probably going to look more like New Jersey and Virginia, where you've got moderate women who also have a national security background. They're white, and they're running a more moderate campaign. You've got Spanberger, who is a former CIA agent. You've got Mikie Sherrill, who's a helicopter pilot. I think that's a much more compelling argument, especially for independents. I think that's the other part of this story. Independents are deciding elections again, more and more so every year, and that happened in Virginia and New Jersey. I think that'll come out in the wash.
I want to talk about, so we're seeing this comment from Chuck Schumer. So he is congratulating Mamdani, no surprise there. But, Kelly Meyer, was quick to point out that earlier today he wouldn't say whether or not he had voted for Mamdani.
Never endorsed.
Or Cuomo. Never endorsed. We're seeing these congratulations. I mean, what does it say about this Democratic Party? Because a Democratic socialist now, going to be the mayor of the largest city in this country. But, I mean, is New York really a predictor of the rest of the country? But yet we see these well-established politicians now, of course, I don't want to say jumping on the bandwagon, but of course, offering congratulations as they should. But it almost still seems like we have a party in, the Democratic Party that is still in disarray.
I think that's right. I think they're fragmented. I think they're leaderless. I think they're going to have a good night tonight, but I think that can be a false indicator of their success because this is not a winning strategy outside of New York. I mean, you're going to see AOC all over the media tonight, but you're not going to see Barack Obama. You're not going to see much of Chuck Schumer because they know if this is the path in other states, they're going to get crushed.
But in other states, they didn't get crushed with a different path. I mean, you just talked about it.
Right, and that's the identity crisis. But I think there's another common trend here. People underestimate the fact that Mamdani was about change. And I think what people want, Republicans and Democrats, whether you're voting for Mamdani or you want Trump, is to kind of blow up the whole system. They do feel the system is rigged. They want more fairness, and that's constant on both sides. However, the two parties continue to go more and more extreme, and most of the country is still in the middle. Almost half of this country is unaffiliated and independent, and they are the true majority, and that's where the action is in the midterms, and I think going forward in general.
That's like what we were talking about in the last block there about California and redistricting, and we're going to have you back next hour in our coverage. Maybe we'll get into some of that
as well.
I know. There's another candidate who was all about change, so that made me think of a question. I have a question for you now.
There you go. File it away.
Okay, it's a deep tease. I like it.
I've already forgotten my questions, but California's closing here in just a few minutes, right? So we're minutes away from there. Washington State as well, but the big one, Prop 50 in California. We will see what the voters say about redrawing those maps, and we might hear from Mayor-elect Mamdani in Brooklyn. We'll be back. It is 11 p.m. on the East Coast. Time flies, right? When you're having fun. I feel like it just started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but there's two big things we're watching right now. The polls closed. It's overtime, time and a half, Starwell. The polls just closed in the state of California, and this was one of the big ones. DDHQ crunching the numbers for us on Prop 50. Okay, so this is the redrawing of the maps. We're going to have those numbers as soon as they start to populate, as they say, and we'll see, what happens in California. Zohran Mamdani, we're waiting for him any moment now to take the stage in Brooklyn. He's going to be the next mayor of New York City. So here we go, along with Nicole Burley and Chris Starwalt. I'm Connell McShane, and we continue with our coverage. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. It's been a very busy night here. We want to take you through all of the races. So Virginia was the first call of the night. Decision Desk HQ projecting a Democratic sweep there, projecting Abigail Spanberger will win the governor's seat. Democrat Ghazala Hashmi will win the lieutenant governor's race. And Decision Desk HQ projecting Jay Jones will win the attorney general's race there. All right, to New Jersey, where Decision Desk HQ projects Democrat Mikie Sherrill will be the next governor of the Garden State. And the big race, of course, much of the country was watching. New York City's mayoral race. Decision Desk HQ projecting Zohran Mamdani will be the winner. So, of course, we are waiting to hear from him. Andrew Cuomo already gave his concession speech. So it's going to certainly be interesting to see what we will hear from Mamdani, because, of course, he has to be the mayor to all New Yorkers.
Well, we know he kept Jessica Tisch, or wants to, as the police commissioner. That was a move, don't you think, Chris, to kind of the establishment here in New York. Tisch family, certainly part of the New York establishment, and Jessica Tisch is well respected here in New York for the work that she's done
on crime,
across multiple departments, including the police department, sanitation as well. So he wants to keep her. How long does she stay, I think, is an open question. But he did start to run like a front runner in the closing days of the campaign. But still, his views are out there. His past comments are out there. It's not a centrist by any means. What's the speech tonight?
Well, look, so he really would like to stay over that 50% mark, wouldn't he? He'd really like to have an outright majority, and probably so would Curtis Sliwa, because he doesn't probably want to be getting the blame if it went down that way. Do you remember what Hillary Clinton's closing argument was about Donald Trump in 2016? It was that all human life on Earth would cease to exist in a global thermonuclear war.
Yeah.
So every day that life persisted on the planet, Donald Trump was beating expectations in his first term.
It's true.
And I think that when it comes to Mamdani, Republicans, the president says he's a communist, that the city will be I heard somebody say it would become like Caracas, and that New York City was doomed. The expectation bar has been set pretty low for Mamdani. Now, I don't know whether he is going to be able to form a governing coalition, and I don't know whether he can include people like Tisch in an effective government. I don't know. And I don't know what kind of mayor Mamdani wants to be. Certainly, he could be an abject failure, and he could come in and go too hard, too fast, and not get the things that he wanted. But he will benefit from the low expectations that his critics have set for him.
I have a question on that. When it does come to the criticism, because we've certainly seen plenty of it, from Republicans leading up to this election. Now he has won. Is there a point where Republicans can go too far? Is it too much? Do you think it could turn some people off?
So what Republicans found out with Bernie Sanders was that people liked Bernie Sanders. And we were talking earlier about independent voters. One of the things that both parties tend to forget is that persuadable voters aren't that ideological. And that when you say, oh, this person has a dangerous ideology, American voters will support very progressive candidates. They will support very conservative candidates. But it's the candidate quality, it's the nature of the candidate that matters. I point to all of the millions of Americans who voted for both Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Right. Those people didn't become racists in 4 years. They didn't change who they were. They were voting for change. They liked this person more than that person, and they were faced with a new choice 4 years later, and they liked that person more than this person. And I think with Mamdani, people who are deeply political, highly partisan, deeply engaged, they don't move. But I think what a lot of persuadable voters and a lot of independents are responding to is the candidate and the person. And Mamdani is telegenic. He is this. You saw the Saturday Night Live skit, the smiling Zohran Mamdani. No matter what he's saying, he's going to finish it with a big Pepsodent smile. And for Republicans, he's not an easy boogeyman to make. And neither was Bernie Sanders. And if you're pleasant and people like you and you're connecting with people, the vilification gets harder.
Yeah. I think they're warming up. We'll see what, this would be an interesting speech to watch, Nicole.
Absolutely. All right, let's go over to Laura Ingle. She is live for us in New York City. She's at the Mamdani watch party. And Laura, we are expecting to hear from him really, truly at any moment.
It sounds like he's about to come out any moment because the screen you see here behind me has had on live returns television stations talking about his win, showing Andrew Cuomo coming out and giving his concession. The crowd has gone absolutely wild. We're at the Paramount in Brooklyn. And it holds 2,600 and it is absolutely packed. And it sounds as though they are about to give an introduction to Zohran Mamdani, of course, making history tonight in New York City, with the mayor-elect about to take the stand here, not the stand, but the podium, coming out to address his supporters that have been behind him. We've been out on the streets of Brooklyn all day long. The number one issue that people have talked about, and you talked about it there at the top, has been the affordability issue in New York City. That really seems to be the message that was driven home, that resonated with most of the voters that we spoke to today at Brooklyn Borough Hall. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Laura Ingle live for us there.
We have a race call or a proposition call to make from our colleagues at Decision Desk HQ. From California, Prop 50, the redrawing of the congressional lines as expected, passes. The yeses have it with a 63-37 margin with the early vote coming in, but more than enough here to project that Prop 50 will pass, and it was expected to do so. The expectation here is that that means the Democrats will net probably 5 congressional seats. Some of those members that we showed you in our last hour of coverage, like Kevin Kiley and Darrell Issa, Republican members of Congress, could be in trouble. So you go current on the left, proposed on the right, and Chris, this is exactly what people expected, and in many ways, this night has gone exactly how people expected, with the exception maybe of some of the margins in some of the states. But Democrats have to be happy with the results, including in California. It's exactly what they wanted, better or worse.
And out there's a very happy Gavin Newsom, who is the front runner. You have to say, and I know you guys don't want to do it. I know nobody wants to do it, but it's my job to make you do it.
Please.
It's 2028 already, right? We're already here. I heard Paul earlier say this, and I've heard many people say it, the Democratic Party is leaderless, it's rudderless, da-da-da. Well, yeah, of course, because they don't have the White House. The way our system works, especially now, is until you have a presidential nominee, you don't have a leader for your party. And Democrats don't have a leader. And Republicans will try to say Zohran Mamdani is the leader, and they'll say this is the leader. But
well, you started this. Who's the nominee going to be in 28 then?
Okay, so Gavin Newsom is going to later tonight, he'll come out and say, we did it. And he's doing it with this whopping margin that's coming in. And if you'll recall, at the beginning of the fight over this, Republicans said, we're going to stop you. This is unpopular. They raised a bunch of money. And then they said, never mind. We're going to just, we always knew we'd lose. We never cared. You're going to have Gavin Newsom, but you're going to have Mamdani tonight and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I see that as the first dyad, the first pairing of challenge within the Democratic Party. They're the first 2 natural constituencies. And Gavin Newsom, who has been many things ideologically over the course of his career, sort of a technocratic moderate to a progressive to now back to kind of a bro. He's adopted sort of a bro Democrat energy, podcast bro Democrat energy.
Literally as a podcast, yeah.
And so I think you'll see him laying claim to the mainstream Democratic label. You have AOC, who's going to say, and with evidence, both of them tonight have evidence to point to about the success of their brands.
Well, my question, though, I mean, I think that goes back to what Paul Rykoff was saying. Because if we have AOC, if we have Mamdani here, if we have Newsom over here, who is leading, though? Because isn't that really just more of the same? We have more of these people who could be the potential leader, but no one is stepping up to actually be the leader because there are all these different facets.
New Hampshire, we'll be in New Hampshire in January of 2028, and it will be cold. And other than that, I can't really tell you who will be intact. But what is beginning tonight, what is beginning at this moment, is this stretch run into next year's midterms. And those midterms will set the table for, think about it this way. The results of the Democratic midterms, of the midterms in 2022, were very consequential because, in part, the Democratic overperformance helped Joe Biden decide to stay in the race. If Democrats would have gotten the skunking they deserved, if it hadn't been for the weird candidates that Republicans had picked, I bet Joe Biden had been pressured out much sooner than he was at the end. If they would have gotten their bells rung like the polls indicated that they would have, the pressure would have been on Biden to get out. But instead, Democrats took a lesson from those midterms. What lesson will Democrats take from tonight? What lesson will they take from midterms a year from now? We don't know. But I can tell you that both AOC and Gavin Newsom, two of the top contenders for the Democratic nomination, are both going to walk out of this evening feeling good about their
I think they put on, the table issues for Democrats at least tonight. We talked about immigration earlier, and certainly with Mamdani, affordability. That work for them. And inflation, by the way, is right where it was when Trump came in, just about 3%. So higher prices are still a story that I would think is a story into 26. And immigration and the way the policy is carried out, the how, is still a story. Lauren Wright joins us. Class up the conversation from Princeton a little bit. Good to see you, Lauren. Or Dr. Wright. She's a political scientist at Princeton University, NewsNation political contributor, and one of our favorite guests during the week. Do you agree with that? The kind of the issues that the Democrats are comfortable running on have been put on the table tonight. The Republicans had their issues that played well for Donald Trump in the last election. And in many ways, it's funny, they were similar, the economy and immigration. And now I think we're seeing the tables turned a little bit. Reflections on the night. What do you see?
Well, that's because the implementation with the economy, specifically tariffs and immigration, with going after illegal immigrants who are not criminals, has been very controversial. And I think it's just a reminder that there are parts of Trump's agenda that have either deviated from what he'd promised on the campaign trail or have looked a lot different in their on-the-ground inaction than they did when they were ideas about let's get tough on these things and let's just get away from this horrific Biden record of the economy. That's really why Trump won. There's also just some basics here. Where I am in New Jersey, there's a million more Democrats than there are Republicans. Right. But I was surprised Sherrill didn't close the gap a little bit more. And then in Virginia, you have almost 500,000 federal workers that live there. They're very upset about the shutdown and about DOJ and about all the government downsizing.
Now, all of that said, I can contradict myself a little bit in saying that sometimes I think we project too much about the future. We say, well, this off-year election in 2025 is going to mean X, Y, or Z for 26, or to Chris's earlier point, for 2028. It's a long way even till next year. A lot can happen. A lot's happened this year. So what did you take away, kind of bigger picture, from like a Mamdani win? Or is it just that the guy was the Democratic nominee in New York, and the Democrat always wins in New York, and he won in New York, and same thing in New Jersey? Are there bigger messages?
There are some very cynical Republicans that are very happy about Mamdani winning tonight because they think this will be an isolated experiment with socialism and will remind people how bad things can get. And I don't necessarily disagree with them, but I actually don't think socialism works as a policy or a set of policies.
Right.
And I think things might go downhill in New York if Mamdani is successful at enacting his agenda. What's more likely is he will turn out to be like a Bernie Sanders, where, you know, he speaks loudly and he has these out there ideas, and none of them
Albany
get
blocks them.
implemented.
You know, the state blocks the city, which often happens here in New York. Let's do this. Lauren, stand by. Let's squeeze in a commercial break here. Mamdani hasn't taken the stage yet. If he does, we'll break out and take it live, but we'll be right back with more coverage. Election night on News Nation. All right, here he is, live from Brooklyn, 34-year-old Zohran Mamdani, next mayor of New York City.
I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity. For as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor, palms calloused from delivery bike handlebars, knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not hands that have been allowed to hold power. And yet, over the last 12 months, you have dared to reach for something greater. Tonight, against all odds, we have grasped it. The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty. I wish Andrew Cuomo only the best in private life. But let tonight be the final time I utter his name as we turn the page on a politics that abandons the many and answers only to the few. New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change, a mandate for a new kind of politics, a mandate for a city we can afford, and a mandate for a government that delivers exactly that. On January 1st, I will be sworn in as the mayor of New York City. And that is because of you. So before I say anything else, I must say this. Thank you. Thank you to the next generation of New Yorkers who refused to accept that the promise of a better future was a relic of the past. You showed that when politics speaks to you without condescension, we can usher in a new era of leadership. We will fight for you because we are you. Or as we say on Steinway, ana minkum wa ilaykum. Thank you to those so often forgotten by the politics of our city who made this movement their own. I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties. To every New Yorker in Kensington and Midwest Brentwood and Hunts Point, know this. This city is your city, and this democracy is yours too. This campaign is about people like Wesley, an 1199 organizer I met outside of Elmhurst Hospital on Thursday night. A New Yorker who lives elsewhere, who commutes 2 hours each way from Pennsylvania because rent is too expensive in this city. It's about people like the woman I met on the BX 33 years ago, who said to me, I used to love New York, but now it's just where I live. And it's about people like Richard, the taxi driver I went on a 15-day hunger strike with outside of City Hall, who still has to drive his cab 7 days a week. My brother, we are in City Hall now. This victory is for all of them, and it's for all of you. The more than 100,000 volunteers who built this campaign into an unstoppable force. Because of you, we will make this city one that working people can love and live in again. With every door knocked, every petition signature earned, and every hard-earned conversation, you eroded the cynicism that has come to define our politics. Now, I know that I have asked for much from you over this last year. Time and again, you have answered my calls. But I have one final request. New York City, breathe this moment in. We have held our breath for longer than we know. We have held it in anticipation of defeat. Held it because the air has been knocked out of our lungs too many times to count. Held it because we cannot afford to exhale. Thanks to all of those who sacrificed so much, we are breathing in the air of a city that has been reborn. To my campaign team, who believed when no one else did, and who took an electoral project and turned it into so much more, I will never be able to express the depth of my gratitude. You can sleep now. To my parents, Mama and Baba, you have made me into the man I am today. I am so proud to be your son. And to my incredible wife, Rama, Hayati, there is no one I would rather have by my side in this moment and in every moment. To every New Yorker, whether you voted for me, for one of my opponents, or felt too disappointed by politics to vote at all, thank you for the opportunity to prove myself worthy of your trust. I will wake each morning with a singular purpose: to make this city better for you than it was the day before. There are many who thought this day would never come, who feared that we would be condemned only to a future of less, with every election consigning us simply to more of the same. And there are others who see politics today as too cruel for the flame of hope to still burn. New York, we have answered those fears. Tonight, we have spoken in a clear voice. Hope is alive. Hope is a decision that tens of thousands of New Yorkers made day after day. volunteer shift after volunteer shift, despite attack ad after attack ad. More than 1 million of us stood in our churches, in gymnasiums, in community centers, as we filled in the ledger of democracy. And while we cast our ballots alone, we chose hope together. Hope over tyranny. Hope over big money and small ideas. Hope over despair. We won because New Yorkers allowed themselves to hope that the impossible could be made possible. And we won because we insisted that no longer would politics be something that is done to us. Now it is something that we do. Standing before you, I think of the words of Jawaharlal Nehru. A moment comes but rarely in history when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. Tonight we have stepped out from the old into the new. So let us speak now with clarity and conviction that cannot be misunderstood about what this new age will deliver and for whom. This will be an age where New Yorkers expect from their leaders a bold vision of what we will achieve, rather than a list of excuses for what we are too timid to attempt. Central to that vision will be the most ambitious agenda to tackle the cost of living crisis that this city has seen since the days of Fiorella LaGuardia. An agenda that will freeze the rents for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants. Make buses fast and free. And deliver universal child care across our city. Years from now, may our only regret be that this day took so long to come. This new age will be one of relentless improvement. We will hire thousands more teachers. We will cut waste from a bloated bureaucracy. We will work tirelessly to make lights shine again in the hallways of NYCHA developments where they have long flickered. Safety and justice will go hand in hand as we work with police officers to reduce crime and create a department of community safety that tackles the mental health crisis and homelessness crises head on. Excellence will become the expectation across government, not the exception. In this new age we make for ourselves, we will refuse to allow those who traffic in division and hate to pit us against one another. In this moment of political darkness, New York will be the light. Here, we believe in standing up for those we love. Whether you are an immigrant, a member of the trans community, one of the many black women that Donald Trump has fired from a federal job, a single mom still waiting for the cost of groceries to go down, or anyone else with their back against the wall, your struggle is ours too. And we will build a city hall that stands steadfast alongside Jewish New Yorkers and does not waver in the fight against the scourge of anti-Semitism. Where the more than 1 million Muslims know that they belong. Not just in the 5 boroughs of this city, but in the halls of power. No more will New York be a city where you can traffic in Islamophobia and win an election. This new age will be defined by a competence and a compassion that have too long been placed at odds with one another. We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about. For years, those in City Hall have only helped those who can help them. But on January 1st, we will usher in a city government that helps everyone. Now, I know that many have heard our message only through the prism of misinformation. Tens of millions of dollars have been spent to redefine reality and to convince our neighbors that this new age is something that should frighten them. As has so often occurred, the billionaire class has sought to convince those making $30 an hour that their enemies are those earning $20 an hour. They want the people to fight amongst ourselves so that we remain distracted from the work of remaking a long broken system. We refuse to let them dictate the rules of the game anymore. They can play by the same rules as the rest of us. Together, we will usher in a generation of change. And if we embrace this brave new course, rather than fleeing from it, we can respond to oligarchy and authoritarianism with the strength it fears, not the appeasement it craves. After all, if anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So, Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. We will hold bad landlords to account because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants. We will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to evade taxation and exploit tax breaks. We will stand alongside unions and expand labor protections because we know, just as Donald Trump does, that when working people have ironclad rights, the bosses who seek to extort them become very small indeed. New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us. When we enter City Hall in 58 days, expectations will be high. We will meet them. A great New Yorker once said that while you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. If that must be true, let the prose we write still rhyme, and let us build a shining city for all. And we must chart a new path, as bold as the one we have already traveled. After all, the conventional wisdom would tell you that I am far from the perfect candidate. I am young, despite my best efforts to grow older. I am Muslim. I am a democratic socialist. And most damning of all, I refuse to apologize for any of this. And yet, if tonight teaches us anything, it is that convention has held us back. We have bowed at the altar of caution, and we have paid a mighty price. Too many working people cannot recognize themselves in our party. And too many among us have turned to the right for answers to why they've been left behind. We will leave mediocrity in our past. No longer will we have to open a history book for proof that Democrats can dare to be great. Our greatness will be anything but abstract. It will be felt by every rent-stabilized tenant who wakes up on the first of every month, knowing the amount they're going to pay hasn't soared since the month before. It will be felt by each grandparent who can afford to stay in the home they have worked for, and whose grandchildren live nearby because the cost of childcare didn't send them to Long Island. It will be felt by the single mother who is safe on her commute and whose bus runs fast enough that she doesn't have to rush school drop-off to make it to work on time. And it will be felt when New Yorkers open their newspapers in the morning and read headlines of success, not scandal. Most of all, it will be felt by each New Yorker when the city they love finally loves them back. Together, New York, we're going to freeze the... Together, New York, we're going to make buses fast and... Together, New York, we're going to deliver universal... Let the words we've spoken together, the dreams we've dreamt together, become the agenda we deliver together. New York, this power, it's yours. This city belongs to you. Thank you.
All right, hearing there from New York City mayoral-elect Zohran Mamdani. His victory speech lasting about 20 minutes or so. More than 1 million votes going to the Democratic Socialist. He will be sworn in January 1st. Mamdani telling the crowd hope is alive. He also at one point addressed President Trump directly, telling him to, quote, turn the volume up. And President Trump did post on Truth Social during that victory speech. The president posting, and so it begins. There it is. So again, Zohran Mamdani is the mayoral-elect of the largest city in the nation. NewsNation's election night coverage continues after a quick break.
My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty. Tonight, you have delivered a mandate for change. A mandate mandate for a new kind of politics. A mandate for a city we can afford. And a mandate for a government that delivers exactly that.
Man of the hour here in New York, Zohran Mamdani. He's going to be the next mayor, just over 50% of the vote, with 87% in over the former governor of this state, Andrew Cuomo, who's just under 42% of the vote. In case you missed it earlier in our coverage on News Nation, our buddy Chris Cuomo talked about his brother's candidacy. Here's part of what Chris said.
And even I can see what this is about. And of course, I wanted my brother to win. I believe in my brother. I think he's a tremendous operator within government. But he's not what Democrats want right now in their party. And Democrats win in New York City, Chris. I mean, that's the one-line analysis is the Democrat was going to win in New York City. But the type of Democrat and what they want, I do believe there's a metaphor here as a reaction to MAGA. And this is what we'll see in the midterms.
That tees up a conversation here. Paul Rykoff, host of the Independent Americans podcast, back at the table. I'm Conal McShane, Nicole Burley. Chris Stirewalt was the Chris Cuomo was referencing. So we can start on that and the type of Democrat and what tonight's message is from Mamdani.
A remarkable message. When he said that you will have a government that loves you back, you love your city, and now you're going to have a city that loves you back. When he said that there was a city that would tackle, there was no problem too big for it to tackle, no issue too small for it to care about, I'm reminded of the ratchet effect that occurs in populist movements, which is things don't work out, people become frustrated. The frustrations of people are easily exploited by demagogues, whether they be right or left, that say, if you just give me enough power, I can make vote for Pedro and all your dreams will come true, as Napoleon Dynamite told us. And you see it on the right and you see it on the left. And here's the problem, ultimately, in the end. What Americans keep saying, what we hear in national election after national election is, please be good at your job. Please just be good at the work that is put before you. And instead of that, what we get is overreach followed by overreach. I think you can certainly see that we can tell the story of how Mamdani got to be where he is and the political mistakes and Eric Adams and all of that stuff. But the story of the night is a snapback against Donald Trump, and a snapback against, I mean, how much did Zohran Mamdani have to say about Donald Trump? So all of that snapback is in part because Donald Trump went too far when he got in. He won an election by 1.5 points nationally, and he got in, and he started, I mean, he literally tore down part of the White House. He did too many things. And we could go back 4 years, and we could say Joe Biden was elected to be a caretaker president, as he said, a bridge into the future. And what did he do? He went bananas too. And he did too many things, and he was too activist. I know that it's very appealing for Mamdani's supporters to believe that there is a government that can give you everything that you want and love you back. But that's not what we're hearing from voters across the country. What we're hearing from voters across the country tonight is do less. Please do less.
Do you agree with this?
I think Chris is getting to the core of maybe what's most important here. This is historic. It's an earthquake politically, but it is not a mandate. 50.5% is not a mandate. 50.5% is what is happening in America. And I think that Trump is too far to the right and out of the mainstream. I think Mamdani is too far to the left and out of the mainstream. And the answer to Donald Trump's overreach is not an overreach in the other direction. And I think that's what you're going to hear from most Americans, is that the Republicans are too far right, the Democrats are too far left, and I am homeless in the middle. And the true path forward for America is the candidate that can unite that middle, the candidates that can bring people together. The message that really worries me the most is he said Donald Trump turned the volume up. We do not need Donald Trump to turn the volume up, and we do not need the other side to turn the volume up. We need both sides to turn the volume down. That is key to uniting America, and also recognizing that the domestic divides that we see is a national security risk. Our enemies would love to see the left and right battling it out and troops in the street, and tonight did not lower the volume or the temperature, and that's what I think most Americans want to see most.
Yeah, maybe a little, though, in Virginia and New Jersey with those candidates, you know, that I would say. They're more moderate.
I think that's true. Yeah.
So, we'll see.
But that's not going to dominate the narrative tonight.
No.
That is what Donald Trump wanted, and he welcomes that fight. And now we've got a national cage match between Mamdani and Trump that's going to unfold.
The guy knows how to campaign, by the way, Mamdani, and how to make a speech. Just you're from New York as well. Yeah. Every reference, outer borough reference. There was not a Manhattan reference. Bus routes. And for whatever you could say, is it legitimate? Is it not?
But he didn't say. But he didn't say Republicans. I'm talking to you. He didn't say white moderates. I'm talking to you. He didn't say I'm going to unite all New Yorkers. Yeah. He said we're taking over. Yeah. Right. And that was not a moderate message tonight. That was not at all a moderate message.
Well, it's interesting, Paul. You said the answer is not overreach. Chris, you say that the government. You can promise that the government will give you everything. Campaigning on hope and change is one thing. Governing on hope and change is another thing. I mean, do you think, because he promised a lot in just what we heard in that victory speech, let alone what we've heard from, on the campaign trail. I know we're running out of time. Do you think he starts off full speed? I mean, promising and delivering are two different things.
Always up to him in New York, the way it works here.
Nothing goes full speed in New York anymore. Welcome to New York traffic. I mean, you can talk a big game and you can promise lots of free stuff, and that sounds great, but that's what lots of developers have promised that still have construction projects in the city that are half done. Can you fix the potholes? Can you fix traffic? Can you lower the cost of living? That's going to be the hard stuff. And can he actually move it forward when half the city is going to be working against him starting tomorrow? I think that's going to be the real test.
You want to top it off, Steigerwalt? A quick thought before we wrap up this
We did it. We did it. We had free, fair, safe elections in the United States. People can trust the results. People did their jobs. We did our jobs. The voters did their jobs. This is a great country. This is a great place to live.
You're right about all of that. It reminds me, speaking of doing our jobs, we should give a shout out to our friends at DDHQ, Decision Desk.
Oh, baby.
Yeah.
Come on.
Everything.
You talk about the best of the business. There's the brain room. They're still going down there. Hey, guys. Scott Trader and everybody down there, they're a separator. They are a separator, first and right, always. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Good night of coverage, right? So
that's right.
All right, for Nicole, Chris Steigerwalt, thank you, Paul Rykoff. I'm Connell McShane. Thank you for joining us. Check out a special edition of Morning in America tomorrow morning on News Nation.